Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live, and it's Tuesday, March 3rd. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We have got so much to talk about. We have earnings from yesterday. We have earnings today in the pre-market, some of them that are actually really important. We also have some earnings after the bell that are going to be very important as well in terms of the software space. You got CrowdStrike and GitLab after the bell, so hopefully they can do a little bit better than MongoDB, which is down 25% after missing revenue guidance by $2 million. I think it's a little bit exaggerated, but nonetheless, that stock is down. And we've got a bunch of updates in regards to what's going on with Iran and the United States. We actually have like 10 different things that have happened over the past 24 hours. And, some of them are not as relevant. A lot of them are very relevant. A bunch of things have happened, quite frankly, in the last 3 hours since I woke up. And it's leading to the S&P 500 having a pretty red pre-market. Now, this was worse. Okay, this was worse. If you were up around 5 a.m., this was down more than 2%. We were touching 672 on the S&P. Right now, we're at 674, which is a little bit better, not that much better. It's down 1.77, but everything is feeling the pain today. Tesla is down 2. ASTS is down 2 after guiding for some pretty sophisticated revenue growth. $1 billion by 2027, they think they're going to do in revenue. But that stock is down 2% after those earnings. Sofi, even after Noto bought $1 million worth of shares, we'll talk about that. That's down 2%. Opendoor is down 4%. Nvidia is down 2%. ServiceNow is down 2%. AMD is down 4%. Bitcoin from 70 to 66. MasterCard, which actually partnered with SoFi today, that's down 1%. Visa's down 1.4%. Salesforce down 1.3%. You get the point. It's an ugly pre-market. It was worse a couple hours ago. It's not that much better. Hopefully when the market opens, maybe we see a bit of a reversal. But unfortunately, the V-shape that we had yesterday from the futures of Sunday night are once again reversing to the downside. And there are some reasons for that we'll talk about. The biggest culprit today in the pre-markets is none other than South Korea. Look at that, folks. 11% down on EWY. Samsung is down 10%. SK Hynix is down 10%, which, by the way, if you have any exposure to South Korea, you're quite literally exposed to Samsung and SK Hynix. Everything else in South Korea is basically irrelevant outside of those two companies in terms of the composition of the ETFs. And both of those stocks being down 10% today is leading to the entire ETF being down 11%. So we'll talk about why it's down. We'll talk about the implications it has on the semiconductor trade. Micron and SanDisk also feeling the pain because those memory names are down. Micron down 5.6%, and then SanDisk is down 6% as well. So memory definitely taking on the chin as we get into the pre-markets. All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about. Chell says, I just woke up. I don't need this. Imagine waking up at 5:30 and all you see is red, just pure red. And I'm like, goodness, is it that? Like, I want to go back to sleep. Like, this is so ugly. It hasn't got that much better. I mean, we tried to reverse about an hour ago, and now we're right back. So, then again, pre-market volumes are not necessarily as strong as when the market opens, but the trend is definitely not our friend today. And I think there's some real reasons for why the trend is not our friend. Hopefully that changes, but we'll try to talk and see kind of how this is playing out. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for being here today. Carolyn, what's up? Saul, Matt, I'm Benny, Dexter. Going to bed after seeing red is the worst. That's true. Going to bed after seeing the red is the worst because then you just wake up and you have bad dreams. Bella, what's up? Thank you for being here. CD, Dregsy, up. We're going to talk about all the explosions. It's not fun. We have a lot of different headlines, a bunch of different Trump tweets. You've got the Iranians bombing the U.S. embassy in Saudi Arabia. I mean, there is a ton of stuff that's going on. Quite frankly, the market should be red with all these headlines, even though we kind of thought it was priced in. I guess not. And so we'll get into talking about it and see how this is playing out. I do have the instant coffee with me today because you know what? If we are going to monitor the situation as hard as we are monitoring it, then we're probably going to need some instant coffee. So here you go. Again, for those that don't know how to do this, I try to be, very sophisticated in how I explain this because I know sometimes it's a complicated process. But basically, you take the cap off the instant coffee, you take your spoon, and then you kind of just make a little dip, throw it in the water, take a little bit more, as much as you want, really. There's no limit. And then, boom, once it's in the water, again, very simple. You just mix it together. Again, I feel like, sometimes people discover their purpose in life as they get older. I don't know, dude. Maybe my purpose is to get people to stop buying Starbucks and just recognize that you can have instant coffee as soon as you wake up. So I guess that's what we're doing. Cheers to everybody and good morning. Sensational. All right, let's get into it. South Korea. Let's start off with this. Why is South Korea going down? Because that will create a framework for discussing what every other asset is kind of experiencing today. First of all, and I didn't even know this, I found out about this morning. South Korea is one of the number one countries that is associated with LNG and LNG exports in particular. Now, every country has to deal with LNG exports, but in the uniqueness of the South Korean population, they are extremely exposed, as per my research this morning, to Iranian LNG and exports of Iranian LNG. Obviously, Iran is having a war right now with the United States, basically, so that's not the best thing in the world. Now, one could argue, why didn't the impact of this happen yesterday? Because we went to war basically on Saturday night or Saturday morning. So the impact of that for the South Koreans would be pretty obvious, right? A couple of days later that, oh, this is not going to be a good thing. And yesterday, South Korea was up 4%. Well, I guess that was kind of the market essentially making the analysis that, hey, we are going to wait and see if there's any level of damage that is going to be kind of resolved. And if it gets worse, then we're actually going to dump it. And then it got worse today. And the trigger that made it even worse today is that there was an Iranian drone strike on Qatar's energy Ras Laffan complex, which is about 20% of the global LNG supply. Again, South Korea in particular gets a lot of their LNG from Iran. So not only are you exposed to Iran, now you're exposed to a strike from Iran on a different complex in Qatar, which is also 20% of the global LNG supply, not just for South Korea. That sent LNG prices higher this morning. That's a reason why the entire stock market is, I think, taking a little bit of a hit. VG is up on that reason, and it's stoking more inflation fears for LNG import-dependent Korea, which is why that index is taking 11% hit. Now, it has nothing to do with Samsung or SK Hynix in particular. Those stocks have run like crazy. One could argue they're not necessarily overvalued. Simply, if you look at the PE multiples and the growth rates that they're putting up, Samsung right there down about 9.8%. However, the entire indice is taking a hit, and that's why the biggest players in that indice, SK Hynix as well, down 11.5%, are feeling some of the red. So I think that's also part of the reason why we were, seeing some more momentum, at least from the broader perspective of how the United States was operating. Yes, that's also true. The Korean markets were closed yesterday. However, EWI was not closed. Right, people could trade EWI and anticipate that this would happen, but EWI, which is the U.S. version of getting exposure to South Korea, that really didn't have any hiccups yesterday. And so I think the attack this morning kind of triggered most people, along with the Korean markets opening up and people basically saying, all right, this is not the prettiest idea to go long on, which created the pain that we're seeing. That's down 11.38% in the pre-markets. And not only that, then you had Trump put out these tweets in the morning, and these tweets also weren't necessarily the best. So this tweet, which definitely makes you think this war might not last for 4 weeks. Trump says the United States munition stockpiles have at the medium and upper medium grade never been higher or better. As was stated to me today, we have a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Wars can be fought forever and very successfully using just these supplies. At the highest end, we have a good supply, but are nowhere we want to be. Much additional high-grade weaponry is stored for us in outlying countries. Sleepy Joe Biden spent all of his time and his country's money giving everything to P.T. Barnum, a.k.a. Zelensky, of Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars worth, and he gave so much of that super high-end away for free. So you got Trump blaming Biden for us not having as many supplies as we should have, but then you have him kind of justifying that even if we wanted to fight this war forever, we have tons of supply, which the way the tweet reads is kind of like we might not have as much supply as he's trying to get everyone to believe. But obviously, the United States wants to operate from a position of strength. So you have that tweet in the morning, and the signal to most people is, okay, this is not ending anytime soon. For Trump to even include the word forever, even if he doesn't mean forever, he's basically trying to imply, hey, if we need to fight for a long time, we have plenty of time and plenty of weaponry to fight, which you would think the drone stocks would potentially get a bid on that as well. Ondas right there, slightly green. It was green yesterday. Red Cat as well was green yesterday. In fact, these are two of the only names that are actually green in the pre-market. AVAV got a nasty downgrade yesterday. They ended up announcing something this morning. That's why that stock is up 3.65%. They also potentially lost a deal yesterday, which is another reason the stock took a 20% haircut. But some of these drone stocks potentially have a form of recovery. And, the argument yesterday was if demand is not going to be there for drones because this war is going to end out quickly, then the perception of buying up the drone stocks as a hedge might be something that is not effective because there's going to be too much momentum going into the drone stocks and there's not a reality to match what's happening. Based on that Trump tweet, I don't think it's that crazy now. If people want to hedge with the drone stocks, yes, you're buying into momentum, so you have to be ready to deal with the momentum going to the downside. But if this war is going to last longer and you find your drone stock like a Kratos, which got another upgrade this morning as well, Kratos right there slightly flat, that gets more contracts, I mean, yeah, these drone companies are going to put up a lot of revenue and a lot of earnings. And maybe the drones are a place to kind of hide out for a little bit. Then again, Trump is, goes back and forth. Maybe tomorrow he says, okay, the war is done. We don't need to be fighting anymore. We're trying to negotiate with the Iranians. In fact, another thing that he said, which kind of goes counter to the whole concept of negotiating, is he says now the Iranians want to talk. He tweeted this a couple hours ago. Their air defense, Air Force, Navy, and leadership is gone. They want to talk. I said too late. Which is also contradictory to the Axios reporting we heard a couple of days ago, saying right after they killed the supreme leader, Trump called up the Iranians and said, all right, do you want to talk now? And they said no. But now he's saying that they actually want to talk, and I'm saying no, maybe trying to counter the narrative. It just feels like all signs are pointing to this being a much longer conflict, potentially even longer than 4 weeks. But I think we do have to give it that initial 4 weeks, given that's the time frame that the administration has set out. And then we'll hopefully get a better understanding of what's happening right here. They can't just stop the balls rolling. I agree. I think it is a bit naive now to assume that the regime change policy, which is explicitly what the United States has been arguing for, is simply going to go away. And I quite frankly do not see how we regime change without boots on the ground. Maybe we do somehow just through airstrikes. I find that a little hard to believe. And if we do, that would probably be the best case scenario. But if not, will Congress vote to put boots on the ground in Iran? A lot of Republicans came out over the past 24 hours, said this is not a war. It's not going to be Iraq 2.0. We're not doing it. Well, if we're going for regime change and we can't actually do it without boots on the ground, then I wonder if that switches. Now, China finally came out today. Their foreign ministers of China and Israel held a phone call in the morning, and China officially said that they oppose the military strikes against Iran by Israel. Obviously, they get a lot of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz. It was rumored yesterday from the IGRC that the Strait of Hormuz was closed. Then the United States came out, the U.S. Central Command, and said, no, that's not true. The Strait of Hormuz is not closed, which is really good for China, because if that was closed, that really hurts their imports of oil. But obviously, China is not happy about this. And, they haven't gotten involved militarily from a tactical perspective. It's not like we have evidence that they've sent weaponry to Iran over the past 48 hours. But I mean, if we start seeing those headlines, things are going to get quite interesting in terms of how other geopolitical powers start to get involved in this war. So that's kind of the core update of what you're seeing. And this video, I think, is really emblematic of what's happening right now. There are Israeli missiles that are striking the capital in Beirut. And you can see there's a passenger plane right there that's just leaving. As you can see in a couple seconds, it's going to be leaving in the midst of these strikes. And it's not just Lebanon. It was also Iranian drone strikes against, again, one of the oil facilities in Riyadh and one of the U.S. embassy in Riyadh, which, this is turning into a full-on Middle East proxy war against a variety of different areas. So you can see right there, the strikes just happened and that flight just got the hell out. And I would imagine a lot of people in Lebanon are probably thinking, hey, maybe this is not the best place to stay. And, that's probably something that a lot of people in the entire Middle East are thinking. If they do have the ability to leave, maybe it's time to leave. I think the unpredictability of the variables are now starting to feel priced into the market. And, what was the analysis yesterday? The analysis was, hey, the market did a really good job getting ready to price in a geopolitical conflict. We saw oil already slightly going up. We saw the drone stocks catch a bid, defense contractors, etc. By the way, oil, another reason the market's down. We crossed 85 on Brent this morning. We're just below 85 right now, but it's up another 7%, which was up 7% yesterday. So we're talking about 14% in the past 2 days. And the pricing in of those geopolitical conflicts was efficient enough for yesterday to have a rally, because the worst of it had already happened, aka the killing of the supreme leader. I think this morning, when you had the drone strikes on the LNG facility in Saudi Arabia, which supplies Iran, which again, Iran supplies South Korea, that's where the market was like, oh, we tried to price this in, but this shit's getting way worse than we thought. And because it's getting way worse than we thought, we have to further price in something bad happening, which is why tech is selling off aggressively, because tech is more high beta, and why defense stocks and drone stocks are kind of catching the bid. XLE, is that up in the pre-market? Yep, that is up another 1%. Your Chevrons, your Exxons, your VGs. I mean, again, VG, it's going up for the wrong reasons, but it's going up. Natural gas prices go up. You got more demand. It was up 17% yesterday, up another 14% today. So this has turned out to be a pretty good hedge that people had. And again, this stock was at $6 back in December. So you're talking about a 91% gain year to date. Now, the stock is obviously down a lot from the IPO, but the conditions that are creating the momentum for VG are kind of showing you how the market's rotating. So, I mean, it's a very, very complex situation that is playing out on a variety of different levels, and the markets are going to have to ultimately react to it. But this Trump tweet this morning pretty much showed me he is ready to continue this war, and he is not necessarily slowing down the level of momentum. In fact, Trump did say yesterday as well that we have the next wave of attacks that will be happening over the next 4 weeks, and those wave of attacks will even be bigger than the attacks that we have seen so far. Also, for those that didn't see this, he laid out his official 4 objectives for Iran. And he said, first, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities. You can see that happening on an hourly basis. Second, we're annihilating their navy. Third, we're ensuring the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Finally, we're ensuring that the Iranian regime cannot continue to arm, fund, and direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. And I guess if those are the objectives and that's how the market is going to have to deal with what happens over the coming weeks, if not months, then stocks are going to have to react. I still continue to believe eventually stocks will price in the worst of it. And, we'll see when we open if we end up dumping as aggressively as we are in the pre-market. But if not, then once again, the market thinks there will be some eventual evolution to this, which will be hopefully a resolution to how this is playing out. If not, we will have to continue going from here. But that's what we got in terms of updates on what's going on with Iran. Why are the memory stocks down? Again, South Korea's 2 big memory stocks are getting hit. That's why I think Micron and SanDisk are feeling it. There's no fundamental reason Micron and SanDisk should be down. I mean, they just raised DRAM prices a couple of days ago. Like, the demand for memory is just insatiable. It's almost as strong as the demand for compute in and of itself. And memory is key for compute, especially for inference training. So, fundamentally, Micron and SanDisk are incredible companies, and they will continue to show just massive earnings growth. But if Samsung and SK Hynix are taking a 10% drop, it's hard for the bucket of these memory stocks to not get hit as well. I do think the South Korea dip will be bought, even if it takes time. Again, South Korea's, I don't think South Korea being up 40% year to date was a meme-ish type of run. I think there's elements of sort of momentum that are there that could be characterized as meme-ish, but at its core, Samsung and SK Hynix are putting up the best earnings that we've ever seen outside of companies like Nvidia. Same thing with Micron and SanDisk. So from that perspective, it makes sense why people are piling in, but momentum takes you up, momentum takes you down. I just don't think the momentum to the downside is necessarily a reflection of fake earnings or meme-ish stocks, but rather it needs a breather. And it's getting a hell of a breather based on what's happened with Iran. But again, the extent of this shouldn't be undermined. This is an entire country's index down 11%. Imagine if the S&P was down 11% right now. So I know it was up a lot year to date, but that's why I think the implication of the memory stocks going down is so massive, simply because of South Korea, which is basically memory, is now going down. Okay, so that's what we got on the Iran updates. We'll probably talk more about it in a bit, but we got a bunch of other stuff going on in the pre-market. So let's get these headlines. Apple introduces MacBook Pro with all new M5 Pro and M5 Max, delivering breakthrough pro performance at next level on-device AI, which we'll talk about as well in a second. Apple, are we getting any momentum? Apple is basically down 1%. 13-inch MacBook will be $1,000. 14-inch MacBook, $2,200. 15-inch MacBook with the M5 at $1,300. So you've got Apple coming out with that announcement. Now, the other reason that Apple is going a little bit more viral is because of a video yesterday of someone running a Qwen 3 model, which is Alibaba's models, locally on their iPhone. And this has started to get people to think, wait a second, if I can run something locally on my phone, do I have to pay $20 to ChatGPT? Now, I don't really think this disrupts the entire subscription business of the LLM companies, because at the end of the day, like most people, I don't think want to take the time to figure out how to run something on their own phone. But what it does highlight is the edge compute on-device narrative is very real. That's one of the reasons OSS has been able to catch a bid this year. And I think more and more, the bottleneck will not just be data centers in and of themselves, but the ability to architect the data center essentially on the device, whether it's a phone, a car, a laptop, whatever it may be. And as a result, if you're able to do the same type of quality of work that you're able to do on a Claude or an OpenAI on the device itself, and that is going to be a whole new not only market for AI, but that's going to introduce a lot of different suppliers that are going to be help filling up that momentum. And Apple would be, one of the biggest companies that probably is a buyer of those supplies to make their iPhones even more ready for on-edge devices. So yeah, low power chips, a lot of this stuff that's memory, that opens up a whole new market for Micron to be able to incorporate HBM inside of local chips that are running edge AI. So I think that is where kind of the world is going, and it's going to have to go there for Siri to be even more effective. But Apple's event tomorrow will probably give some more updates on that. Apple right there trying to get a little bit of a bid, 263 in the pre-market. Qualcomm is a name to look out for. That is correct. We've talked about this a couple of times on the show. Jason as well talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Qualcomm is a major player for edge AI compute. They've been a massive supplier for Apple. So there's a military component to edge AI, which is, I think, the OSS angle. OSS right there, down about 1% of the pre-market. But the consumer angle, I mean, it's definitely Apple. And then the sort of ancillary suppliers could be a name like Qualcomm. That helps out as well. Apple's also doing a new studio display with tilt adjustable stand starting at $1,600 that they will be selling as well. Do you think Apple could be the first to 10 trillion? I think Apple is underrated in their AI moat if they can actually get a real agentic workflow inside of every single device, the 2.5 billion that they have in distribution, because that's when they're going to be immediately, in my opinion, going to have a chance to monetize AI. They might not charge for a subscription instantaneously, but within a couple months of being hooked on to AI from Apple devices, yes, I think they could be a massive winner, but stock's a little expensive. They don't have to spend the CapEx stuff, which is good, but it's Apple, and Apple gets the Apple premium always. Now, again, the people that have the Pixel and the Google devices that are already running AI on their phones and already able to do a bunch of stuff, they would probably disagree. It's just Apple has distribution, and if they can get that distribution at scale with AI in a meaningful way, then I think that would be very important. By the way, we got some insider buying. EOSE CEO, I know this one got hit pretty hard, 50% last week. He just bought 60,000 shares at $5.75. $5.75. So you have a buy from the CEO, which is always good to see. Nice to see some level of confidence. Speaking of insider buys, let's talk about Noto and Sofi. He bought 56,000 shares yesterday, which I thought was really nice to see, given he told Tanner on his podcast 2 weeks ago that as soon as he would have the chance to buy, he would buy. And then he did. He also kind of bottom ticked it at like 1788 yesterday when he bought those shares. Also, Sofi and MasterCard announced an enhanced partnership to enable Sofi USD as a settlement option across MasterCard's global payments network. Sofi USD as a settlement currency across MasterCard's network enables issuers and acquirers to help millions of businesses instantly settle transactions. We are seeing more and more of stablecoin adoption. I know Ethereum is not necessarily seeing its price increase, but the entire thesis around ETH over the past year has been around stablecoin adoption. And it looks like that is happening across a variety of financial institutions. Now, someone did question Noto about buying and said, hey, dude, you're worth a lot more money than $1 million. Why are you only buying $1 million worth of stock? And I think his response was actually pretty reasonable. He says, there is only one reason I buy Sofi. It's because I think it's a great risk reward despite the concentration. I'm a blue collar kid. And no matter how much money I have, I spend 1 million is a ton of money, and I have 1,000 other ways to spend it or use it that would be meaningful and impactful to people and organizations that are near and dear to me. By the way, a prepaid forward is not a sale. It's a way to finance liquidity. Look at the price point of the ceiling, and that might make you more informed about how I think about value in a given period of time. No need to guess. It's all researchable. And if you don't have the answers, you can ask me. And going forward, I will correct your mistakes. So he kind of went to town on this guy who basically said, Noto's buying it from a symbolic perspective. And, I agree with Noto. $1 million, no matter how rich you are, is a lot of money, even if it's not a lot proportional to your net worth. Noto's very, very concentrated in Sofi, and, he's executed as a CEO. So I do think this buy is bullish. Unfortunately, the algos of the pre-market don't really matter given the Iran situation. I mean, Sofi was pushing 19 yesterday. Now it's right back at 18. It was at 1750 in the pre-market. This market is fundamentally dictated by the I guess, incessance of how the market perceives where the world is going. And no matter how good Nvidia earnings are or Sofi earnings are or MongoDB, which missed revenue guidance by $1 million, Street wanted 623. They came in at 622. The stock's down 30%. Like, you have to not only be perfect in this market, but if the broader market is going down, whatever perfection you have is not going to be met with any level of sympathy. So unfortunately, I don't know if it matters if Noto's buying shares, because at this point, the market is kind of controlling how these shares end up playing out. Also, you have the Mercado Libre director, first insider buy since 2022. bought $100,000 worth of stock. He bought 57 shares. Mercado Libre is down 7%. So that's what we got going on right now. Why are the men who control the stock market so emotional? Like, get over it, drama queen. This is actually, I agree. Men should not run the stock market, because as we constantly are monitoring the situation, we are way too emotional. I think if women were in charge of the stock market, we probably would not get the stupid swings that we see every single day. But us men and our ability to monitor the situation means that I think sometimes we monitor it a little too hard. And we raise price targets up and down because of this and that, and the company misses by 2 cents. Oh no, take the stock down 40%. Like, it's literally all men. I mean, it's just the truth, dude. It's like I'm not some super feminist or something. It's just true. Like, if women ran the market, I don't think we would have this stupid 2% up or down every day on the S&P 500. Unfortunately, this is and I get it. I'm not saying women are not emotional, but when it comes to stocks, men have a different level of emotion, and it ends up leading us to sell and buy for absolutely no reason. Nvidia, Wedbush raised their target to $300. You got Dan Ives raising it from $230 to $300. Morgan Stanley also made Nvidia their top pick outside of Micron, so that got a $260 target yesterday. Amazon explores helping others apps sell chatbot ads. Wow. Amazon getting into the advertising business for chatbots, and OpenAI obviously has been exploring that as well. So it looks like Amazon, OpenAI, and Gemini are kind of the main contenders, which would make sense for advertising inside of chatbots. Claude has kind of rejected that. In fact, they ran ads to protest, metaphorically, ChatGPT running ads inside of their chatbot. But you have Amazon as a new player that is getting into this race. All right, so that's the update around Iran. Actually, we have a couple more updates on Iran. So this video also went viral last night, and I think the interpretation of this video is making the rounds today. It has like 10 million views. I don't know if Rubio meant exactly what he said, but nonetheless, he said it, and that's getting a lot of people to really think twice about how this is playing out. Basically, he said the reason we took a preemptive act is because we knew that Israel was going to act anyway, so we decided to join them versus let them go by themselves.
The United States conducted this operation with a very clear goal in mind. I haven't got a chance to see a lot of reporting. I don't understand what the confusion is. Let me explain it to you, and I'll do it once again as clearly as possible. Perhaps you'll report it that way. The United States is conducting an operation to eliminate the threat of Iran's short-range ballistic missiles and the threat posed by their Navy, particularly to naval assets. That is what it is focused on doing right now, and it's doing quite successfully. I'll leave it to the Pentagon and the Department of War to discuss the tactics behind that and the progress that's being made. That is the clear objective of this mission. The second question that's been asked is, why now? Well, there's two reasons why now. The first is it was abundantly clear that if Iran came under attack by anyone, the United States or Israel or anyone, they were going to respond against the United States. The orders had been delegated down to the field commanders. It was automatic, and in fact, it bared to be true, because in fact, within an hour of the initial attack on the leadership compound, the missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
So, I think this is really important to analyze, not only as an American, but for everyone trying to figure out why this war happened. At the end of the day, Rubio's quite clearly saying that we had intelligence that told us an attack was going to happen and that Israel was going to preempt that attack. And he's going as far to say, if we didn't act first, we would be being persecuted on Congress in a couple months for why we had intelligence and didn't do anything. So we decided to decisively take the action because we already knew that there was going to be a back and forth happening between Iran and Israel, and we decided to intervene ourselves and decide to join the operation. Now, whether you like that argument or not, the question is going to be how the American people ultimately navigate the response and the justification for this. And right now it's going to be a big game of PR and public perception on how Trump is able to justify people getting around this idea of having this quote unquote special military operation in Iran. It has not turned into a war officially yet. I know Pete Hegseth yesterday said it was a war like 50 times, right? He was like, we didn't start this war, but we're going to end this war. But Trump himself has said this is not a war. It has not been declared a war. So I wonder in the next 4 weeks, will it be declared a war? Will it not be declared a war? How serious is it going to become? But right now, I think, you've got a lot of people that kind of understand why we did this. And you also have a lot of people saying, why exactly the nukes? What exactly was the reason for why we took this action? Obviously, we've heard from many Iranian perspectives. We had Farzad on the show yesterday saying that this was 1,000% justified based on the terror that the regime was imposing. The inevitable question then becomes, okay, what next? Maybe it was the ethical thing to do, but how do we actually instill or make sure that there's not going to be a power vacuum that is instilled as a result of this? And, that is a question that no one fully has an answer for right now. 187 or 177 on Nvidia. That's down 2.75%. That one continuing to sell off. Pre-market's not getting that much better. We have 10 minutes until the market opens. Everything's still pretty ugly right here. S&P down 1.76 as well. War is an act of Congress. That is correct, which is why it's not a war, technically. That's what Trump keeps saying. But I wonder if it turns into a war. Oh, we got another headline. Oil just hit the intraday high. Wow. As Iraq starts shutting output. Oh my, that's not the best to see. Wow. Iraq will be forced to cut its production by more than 3 million barrels in a few days if oil tankers cannot move freely. Iraq has shut down oil production at Rumalia, the world's second largest oil field, which produces 1.5 million barrels of oil per day. Okay, this is getting worse, folks. Well, now it tells you why the S&P continues to be down to and why it's hard to reverse and why there might be a little bit more downside right there. Now, again, if Iraq decides to reopen that facility, then that headline could go away very quickly. The problem is they've shut down oil production probably because it might just not be safe to be producing at that site. I mean, that's the headline we have right now. We'll try to get some more details on it. But if it's a question of their ability to literally physically produce it because they don't feel like it's safe right there. And Iran's not helping with the drones that they are sending to Middle Eastern quote unquote allies. And so you got a lot of the Middle East that's really just pissed off about everything that's happening from Iran in particular. Like they're mad about Israel, but they're also really mad about Iran. And that's creating a bit more pain. We had one of the Congress people just tweet, given the events in the Middle East and the energy security implications, I convened an extraordinary meeting of IEA, which is the Energy Association member governments today, to discuss the oil and gas market situation and options to respond to disruptions. Also, gas prices are now up 11 cents overnight. Prices were already climbing due to the switch to summer blends, but spiked this week after U.S. strikes. We are now at $3.11 for the national average. It was at $3 back on Friday. All right. So you got oil prices spiking up, Iraq shutting off oil production. Against the Strait of Hormuz is not necessarily closed. There was rumored to be closed yesterday. We'll probably get more updates on that later throughout the day if it's actually closed or not, but you have conflicting narratives right there, and gas prices continue to go higher. Well, it's good for VG. It's good for VG. VG right there at $13.08. That is up 14% on the day. Some of the other headlines we have. So this one was a weird one, but U.S. officials are thinking of limiting the Nvidia and AMD sales to 75,000 to China. This is just so stupid, in my opinion. Like, either let them sell the chips or not. So not only do Nvidia and AMD have to pay a 25% tariff on every single chip, and that's not justified under IEEPA, so they actually do have to pay that tariff. But now the government's thinking we're only going to allow them to sell 75,000 per customer. It's like Alibaba probably wants to buy more than 75,000 chips. And so does ByteDance. And so does Tencent. So, and if this economy keeps getting hit with rising oil prices, we kind of need the stock market to be okay. And for the stock market to be okay, the biggest companies in the world that are leading the AI revolution, they kind of have to put up good earnings. And so this is why we're in a real catch-22. It's like, if the stock market collapses, that is the collapse of the K-shaped economy. We've talked about that extensively, right? The reason that people are able to spend more money at the top is because they feel like they have more money. And if you feel like you have less money, you might not go out to that dinner. But if you're the only person that can afford to go out to that dinner, because people on the bottom of the economic ladder can't afford to go to that dinner at all, if you can't start going to that dinner, I mean, then you start to see the cracks start to appear. And then if you actually have oil prices go up, which is a direct, essentially tax implicitly or explicitly on everybody in regards to airlines, cruise lines, etc., and that lessens consumer demand, and that lowers profit margins for a lot of different corporations that really don't have margins to begin with, like United Airlines, which is down another 4% in the pre-market. It just ends up being a pretty bad situation. By the way, gold and silver is not your safe haven, folks. Silver is down 8% in the pre-market. Gold is down 3%. Once again, I think long-term these assets will be fine. But I continue to reiterate, if you want volatility, there's plenty of things you can buy in the stock market that will give you volatility. Trusting gold and silver as the safe haven, I just think it doesn't make any sense when these safe havens don't go up or down 7% a day. Like, yeah, I feel like Palantir is a better safe haven than freaking silver at this point, which, by the way, Palantir got an upgrade by Rosenblatt to $200. So they did upgrade Palantir this morning to 200. But yeah, what is the safe haven? It's the Dixie. Look at that. The dollar is at 99.28. When's the last time you saw the dollar a little bit under $100? I mean, we've been stuck between 95 and 96 for forever, basically, on the USD. In fact, the USD is having one of its best days in, I believe, in about a year. Take a look at this chart right here. The South Korean index is having its worst day since August 2024. And basically, the US dollar is having its best day since around that same time. This is the first time in a while that the price has changed to the upside of about 1%. That is the stock market, or at least the credit markets, I would argue, piling into the USD. Now, one of the reasons why the USD continues to be a safe haven is because we have something called the military, which backs up the value of the dollar. A lot of people say, well, why is the dollar valuable? Part of the reason is because we have the biggest military in the world. And I think that is being on display. And as a result, more people are just remembering how important the dollar is in terms of its ties to the US military. Now, maybe gold and silver once again catch up, but I just think the volatility of these things in comparison to other assets is becoming quite comical. And of course, copper is down because silver is down, so it's like all these assets are kind of playing back and forth with each other. Silver right there down 7.65% in the pre-market. We got about 6 minutes until the market opens. AMD getting hit, Nvidia getting hit. Venture Global, look at that, 17% up. Let's see if that one gets dumped when the market opens or if people just continue to pile in. But that is one of the green names, along with the drone names, the defense contractors, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin also catching a bit, ExxonMobil, as those are green as well. We did have Target earnings. They beat on the guide, and that's kind of all that matters. Street wanted 750. They came in at 850. Target's up 2.9%. So you did have a decent earnings from Target. Sea Limited, they beat by 2% on EPS, 7% on revenue. This stock just is getting hammered, and I don't exactly know why. That's down 20%. And this is an international name. You would think investors would want a little bit more international exposure, especially if those companies are doing well. They had to say something in the guidance that got the street really upset. Revenue's up 40% year over year. EPS is up 62% year over year. But that stock, unfortunately, is red on the day by about 19%. And then again, Target had a double beat. Actually, they missed on revenue. It was a very slight miss, 30.4 versus 30.47. EPS 244 versus 216. That's why Target is getting some green in the pre-market. Bitcoin right there, 67,180. You have BMNR that bought another 50,000 ETH last week. That's down about 3.4%. And then Ethereum, that is at 1965 as well. Do you guys own VG? So I think a decent chunk of us in the chat own VG. We were talking about it a lot. Again, I'm not an expert on natural gas, but Chris and Matt have been talking about this thing since IPO. So yeah, I mean, if you own it, you probably got in around that $6-7 range, which it was stuck at for about 7 months. Not 7 months. It was like 4 or 5 months from September to the end of December, even early January. But the only fear I have with buying VG right here is that if this conflict is not as prolonged as people think it is and natural gas prices come back down to reality, does VG just collapse, right? Which is not something that is unlikely to happen if the war ends soon. But if the war continues to go further, then yeah, maybe there's a lot more momentum for VG. So I don't think it's necessarily a sell if you got it around that 6-7 range. Now, granted, you're up 100% in this market. It's hard to make profits. Then there you go. But it is a nice hedge. It's just that hedge can flip pretty quickly if if the market actually prices in the war is coming to an end. So I liked it at 6.7. I don't know if at 12.13 buying into this much strength, it's the easiest buy, but if this keeps continuing, then maybe it ends up being a decent hedge. And then you got this headline from the Financial Times about Warsh, which is also really important. So you have Kevin Warsh basically wanting to not engage in QE, but the Financial Times is claiming that it's not going to be the easiest for him to do that because the Fed has already come down from about 9 trillion to 6.6 trillion on their balance sheet. So the idea that Warsh is going to be able to shrink the balance sheet even more after they've already shrinked it by about 2.7 trillion in the past couple months, unlikely. So although we know that he's a hawk, I think rates will be coming down. And if rates do come down effectively and we get a little bit of QE, although we have a 2.7% chance of actually getting a rate cut in March, maybe Kevin Warsh is going to potentially come to the rescue to kind of help these risk on assets catch a bit. Speaking of low rates, Opendoor, by the way, the CEO of Opendoor tweeted yesterday that we have a product that will get you 4.99% rates. I don't know what financial shenanigans Opendoor is doing to be able to lock this in for the customers. If they are able to do this in a meaningful way, that is a full 125 basis points below the average in the country. If they're able to do that, then I think that's really bullish for Opendoor. Like very, very bullish for Opendoor. But he put a bunch of tweets underneath this tweet to kind of remind people this is in beta. We're still working on it because he obviously got a lot of questions on, hey, buddy, how are you doing this? And, his argument is there's a bunch of agent fees inside of mortgages that we are stripping out of. And even if you do that, I don't know if you get below 5%, but if they can figure that out, that would be pretty damn bullish for Opendoor. So maybe they can, but time will tell. Opendoor right there, that's down 4% in the pre-market. Again, that high beta growth getting hit. We got about 30 seconds until the market opens. S&P 500 down 1.7% as well. ASTS had a great earnings. We'll see if that can ultimately flip green on the day. It's green right here in the pre-market. Let's see if that can keep going. It was at 95 last night. Carnival Cruise, that's down 5%. Next Decade's up a little bit. Circle getting hit. That's down 4%. Salesforce down 1%. Ultimately, I guess this market's going to have to figure out if we can price in any meaningful level of understanding that this ends. And if we can't, then, maybe things are going to continue to be in flux. And that's why markets will see a little less momentum. Oh, I didn't do the red or green poll. Okay, I'll do that right after the bell. But put in the chat, red or green, what do you think? Obviously, we are in an ugly little red right now. And hopefully that changes. Green or red. All right, we got that in just now. And let me know what people think is going to happen today. All right, Tuesday, March 3rd, 9:30 a.m. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's see how this plays out. S&P 675.17, down 1.65% on the day. That's actually way better than what it was in the pre-market. So maybe you got a green candle right there. It's trying to have a reversal. I think if we don't get above 680, it's not really a reversal. So we got some work to do, but that's down $10 on the day. C Limited, 23% down. That's ugly. Nvidia, rebound, 179. Nvidia rebound 179. Very similar to what happened yesterday for Nvidia. Immediately it tanked in the pre-market 172 and then it shot back up. Looks like we're seeing that right now to an extent. Mercado Libre, that's down 4%. Sofi, that's only down 1.4%. OSS, that's down 4%. Apple, that's down 0.5%. EWY, South Korea, still down 11%. So no one's really stepping in to buy the dip on South Korea. ASTS hit 89. Now it's back to 86, basically flat from where it was yesterday. Right before the earnings. Amazon down 2%. Big Bear AI revenue guidance was actually decent compared to what they did last year, but they're growing 17%. Stock's worth 1.7 billion. Price of sales of 11. Might not be the easiest risk to reward, but that stock right there is down 4% after those earnings. JP Morgan, that's down 2%. Coca-Cola's down 1%. Southwest Airlines, Delta, and American Airlines all down about 4 to 5%. Ethereum at 1965. SPY at 675. Where is Palantir? 144.99. Palantir going green on the day. Going green on the day. 145.05. That is up now 145.38. Again, they are being seen as one of the beneficiaries of this conflict in terms of providing their software. So the market is giving them that benefit. Ondas goes red. Didn't expect that. Didn't expect Ondas to go red as the drone stocks were green, but that one goes down. How about Redcat? That was also green pre-market. That is still green, up 6.4%. Kratos got a contract this morning. That stock is down 1.1%. Ethereum at 1964. Open Door still down 4.5%. Target had a good earnings. Is Target getting any love? 2%. 2% on Target. Duolingo goes green, back to 100. This one fell to 85 after their earnings. A little bit of a bounce right here. Zeta, which was below 17 in the pre-market, that's back above 17. That's down 2%. Wix.com, that's up a little bit. Broadcom at 310, that's down 3%. Netflix, once again, a champ in the midst of all of this pain. Netflix is up right now, 97.26. They got a free $3 billion from Paramount, which is definitely something shareholders should be happy about. Lemonade down another 5%. I don't really know why Lemonade continues to get hit as aggressively as it does. It makes you feel like when it got to 99, it was purely fake. It's like, okay, maybe 99 wasn't real for Lemonade. Maybe that was just hype. But I mean, 50% down is kind of crazy. You would think the bleeding would stop around 75, even at 70, even at 65. Nope, we are right at 50. So I don't think there's a good argument on this, but like many growth stocks, I mean, I don't think SoFi should be below 20 either. They are just getting wrecked. SoFi right there, 1848 going green on the day. Meta's going green. Meta is about to go green, 650, about $3 away. SoFi did go green for a second after that Noto buy, which is nice to see. Royal Caribbean, that's down 2. Norwegian is down 3. Tesla, are we above 400? We are not. 395. We did close above 400 yesterday on Tesla. I mean, look, Tesla, although it's down below 400, Tesla trades at one of the most expensive multiples in the entire stock market. The fact that it's holding these levels, I think, is very impressive. So it's teetering and tottering around 390 to 405. I think that's a win because in this type of market, high beta is getting absolutely destroyed. So I think it's not too crazy for Tesla to actually just be below 400. Nike's down 2%. Elf's down another 1%. What about Hims? Hims is up 1%. The VIX is up 17%. Wow. The fact that the S&P is only down 1.5 on a 17% move on the VIX. VIX right here, 25.19. I actually think is rather encouraging. And that's not bad. Grab's probably getting hit because of Southeast Asia around C Limited earnings, which once again, I have no idea why C Limited is down 25%. Like something had to be so atrocious for the street to be bad at 30% revenue growth and 38% revenue growth and 62% EPS growth. But, Grab's in the same bucket as a lot of the international names. Also, Nubank, the rising dollar is not good for international names. Unfortunately, Nubank, which was at $18, now back at $14.60. They also crushed earnings. But I think the Dixie going up maybe not be the best for Nubank, Grab, C Limited, etc. And maybe that's why they're taking a hit. Carnival Cruise, that's still down 3.7%. What about PayPal? PayPal is also green on a day like this. 45.74, that's up 0.24. Tesla 393, still down 2.4. Duolingo back below 100. SoFi 1850. Palantir 144. How about Hood? Hood 74.80, that's down once again another 5%. Again, these names have been stuck in a range. Hood has been stuck between 70 and 80. SoFi has been stuck between 16 and 20. Nvidia has been stuck between 175 and basically 185. I think a lot of these names, if you're selling calls against them, you're really able to reduce your cost basis and just profit off the volatility here, which might be the best strategy. Wow, Google below 300. Google below 300. Oh, I forgot to mention Pinterest. Elliott took $1 billion stake. Activist investor took $1 billion stake. Pinterest right there, 1850. Pinterest bottomed at around $15 2 weeks ago on their earnings, which weren't the best earnings, but I don't think they were abysmal. This stock has, not done well over the past couple of years. So Elliott, $1 billion stake, maybe some activists coming in could change the trajectory of Pinterest. Nubank right there, still down 3.6. S&P down 1.5. Microsoft, did we go green? We are still red on Microsoft in terms of the Mag 7s. We are red across the board. Apple, Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon. Amazon getting hit the worst, down 2.3. And then Nvidia actually getting hit the least, along with Meta getting hit the least on some of this pain. TSM, which was a $2 trillion company last week, that is now a $1.83 trillion company. So about 170 billion wiped out over the past 2 weeks. TSM right there, down 4.6%. Adobe is green. That's up 2. Archer also, they did beat expectations on revenue for earnings. That stock down 9%. They put up 300,000 in revenue. Street expected 0. They did miss on EPS, but Archer right there down 8.5. How about Joby? Joby's also down 4% on Archer. Palantir goes red. Peter Thiel did sell 2 million shares of Palantir yesterday. So we did get that headline yesterday. It was a pre-planned sale. So the thing is, he has not sold stock since $34, if I'm not wrong. I think he sold a little bit at 70, but this is the first time he sold a decent amount of stock. So the fact that he sold 2 million shares yesterday at 140 and the stock was green yesterday, I thought was quite incredible. It just goes to show how much the market is perceiving Palantir as a winner in any conflict, which is why, if an insider were to sell 2 million shares, usually the stock would get hit pretty bad. And Palantir was fine yesterday. So I don't think it's the biggest deal. He still has over 100 million shares that he owns, and the market probably will look past that. Joby right there, that's down 3%. Microsoft down 1%. Hood still down 4% as well. A-Lab down over 6%. Again, it's a bloodbath across the entire board, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these names getting hit. Google right there, 301, just got back above it. It was at 298. How about Nebius? This was at 87. That's still stuck at 87, still down 3% as well on the day. Nvidia right there down 1.5. Grab loses $4, $3.99. That is down 4% on the day with C Limited. S&P's down 1.5%. Meta's down 0.5%. Viavi is down 4.6. Amcor is also down 5% right here. Axon's down 1. Celsius is down 2. Western Digital is down 6. Copper is down 9. At least the copper ETF for miners. Iren is down 2. CoreWeave, wow, another 5% down right here. ASTS is the only one going the opposite direction, 91.50. How about Rocket Lab? Rocket Lab is trying to go green, but you're seeing that guide on ASTS, which was really impressive, $1 billion in revenue by 2027. That would put them at 30 times sales instead of trading at 2,000 times sales if they execute to those levels. So you can see the market feels a bit happy about that, but I would not be surprised if ASTS potentially turns red. There's just a lot of high beta algos going to the downside. So the fact that it's green is very impressive, especially when most of these names are getting hit pretty bad. Shopify down another 5%. Big Bear down 5%. Coinbase, which was up 10% yesterday, that's down 5%. Lumentum, this freaking company, was up 10% yesterday, and now it's back down the exact 10% after the Nvidia investment. AAOI, I know a lot of people are talking about that one. That's down 6%. Actually not as bad. It was at 90 in the pre-market. Now it's at 95. So this one actually catching a bid. And then Coherent also down 5% right there. MongoDB, this one is like, to me, one of the dumbest SaaS sell-offs I've ever seen. I don't know enough about the company to buy the dip, but they missed revenue by $2 million on the guide, which they're probably sandbagging. So I really don't get how the street is like, we got to take it down 30%. I mean, imagine if Adobe, when they have earnings, they miss by $1 million on the guide, and the street takes them down 30% after it's already down 50%. Like, it just feels a bit aggressive. Mongo right there, 27% down. That's also kind of not helping IGV, as that's down 1.4% as well. Did VG dump? VG, okay, not a real dump. 1340 to 1280. It's down a buck, which is inevitable if it pumps this much. But still up 12% on the day, which should be good to see for the longs. Apple trying to go green. It went green for a second at 265. But now you're seeing it trying to recover. AMD, potentially almost below 190. Bitcoin right there at 66.7. A lot of people are saying yesterday was a rug pull. And so I agree to an extent that yesterday market slipped green, and it ended up, getting a lot of people excited. Money came into the market, and now you're kind of getting the rug pull right here. However, I think there were some updates in the past 24 hours, in particular the Iranian drone strikes on multiple facilities in Saudi Arabia. And then you have the headline of Iraq shutting down oil production at one of their largest facilities. So I think those two headlines together, plus the language of the administration, Hegseth, Rubio, Trump, all clearly saying this is not going to end soon, even if they want to put a 4-week timeline on it. I mean, the markets are probably like, hey, it might be longer than 4 weeks. I think you put all that together, and that's why you're seeing the reversal this morning versus like a classic rug pull. I'm not saying there's not some elements of algos manipulated people to get excited to buy yesterday. But I do think you had some major updates in the past 24 hours, and now we end up going red. And I think what started all of this is South Korea. South Korea's index hit a circuit breaker this morning as well. And that's another reason. Look at that, 12% down. That's now at the lowest of the day, 129.70 for EWY. That's also part of the reason a lot of the memory names and supply chain bottlenecks and AI are getting hit. Micron right there down 7%. SanDisk is down 7%. The plan from the administration changes on a daily basis. Well, I do think a lot of Americans are just like, yeah, what's the plan? ASTS, by the way, giving up a lot of those gains, dude. 92 to 88 right there. Rock Lab below 70. What exactly is the plan? And how do we move forward from here? Because the extent that I've heard from the administration is we are just going to take out their Navy, take out their military, and use strategic airstrikes to make sure that the people flood the streets of Iran and liberate themselves by taking over the capital. And I'm like, okay, could I see that happening? Yeah. Do I also think that's a little utopian? Yeah. The idea that the people just flood the streets and they take over. It's like, yeah, it's very possible, but if you had boots on the ground, it would be even more possible to clear the way for them to be able to do that. But I don't think we want to put boots on the ground. So if we're going to just do this through airstrikes, I don't know. It's just confusing enough to try to figure out if this actually has a possibility of playing out. Mercado Libre right there, that's down 4.7%. The VIX, high of the day, 25.83. That's up 20.48%. Until we see the VIX calm down, S&P is not going to calm down. S&P is at the lowest of the day. Yup, folks, lowest of the day. We just lost 674. Let me pull up the fear and greed. And then we'll look at the heat map. Fear and greed's at 34, lowest we've seen in a week. 34, lowest we've seen in a week. Below 30 is, I think, where people start to get a lot more interested. We didn't get below 30 until February 5th last time. And by the way, we are like $2 away on the S&P from those February 5th lows, which we barely survived February 5th by staying above 670. That has been that core technical level that we've talked about for the past couple of weeks. So I think the goal today is just stay above 670. Or else we might have a little bit of pain. Plug, they did have a good earnings as well. That stock right there, 17%. Again, this is a small cap, but that getting some momentum on a good earnings. Palo Alto, that is up 1.3. CrowdStrike, that is flat. They have earnings today as well. We're going to see how Crowd can maybe change the narrative around software and AI. What do you think are the top 3 buys right now? I think this is highly personalized to people's own portfolios. Like for me, once again, I will say I think Nvidia is a top 3 buy on my list, just because I don't think the level of growth that they are putting up is being properly rewarded in the market. But having said that, I understand that Nvidia can absolutely fall below 170 if the market really takes a hit. I do think the crypto names are not the top buys right now, including Robinhood, as much as I love Robinhood, and they're going to have an event tomorrow, and hopefully that event changes the narrative. Until Bitcoin changes its attitude, this thing is just stuck inside of that algo. And as much as they put out good news, it's just not seeming to have an effect on the stock. I mean, the last time Robinhood was hitting 80 was when Bitcoin was hitting 70,000, which was yesterday. Bitcoin goes down, Robinhood goes down. So Bitcoin, MicroStrategy, Coinbase, BM&R, Hood, all of these, I think you have to wait and see until crypto recovers. And they're just, not at the top of my list at the moment. And then your semiconductor names, right? Like Broadcom is down a lot from those 430 levels. Is this a buy the dip? Theoretically, it should be, but if they have any weakness on their earnings, especially if they mention OpenAI is not really helping them out right here, they already guided that OpenAI wouldn't be paying them for 2026. How does that affect the market? CoreWeave, this thing was at 150, it's at 73. If you don't buy it, a 50% drawdown when you buy. But then again, if Nvidia is not going to get any momentum, is CoreWeave really going to turn around? So, I mean, theoretically, oil, drones, and defense are probably what people are piling into. But I think on individual portfolios, the question is, what do you have the most conviction in? Because everything's on sale. And even though some things that you have conviction in maybe are not in the right thematic, like a crypto name, if they're on sale, then maybe that's what the DCA consists of. Zeta, I don't think deserves to be down here, but nonetheless it is. So I think a lot of this is contingent on how you think of portfolio allocation. MicroStrategy down another 5% today. They did buy the dip yesterday. Coinbase That's down 5% as well. Yeah, and with cuts being priced out, that's another big point. A lot of super heavy if you're buying a risk-on asset that trades at a heavy premium and rate cuts are being delayed, whether that's Palantir, Robinhood, Tesla, Lemonade, Rocket Lab, ASTS, that's one thing you have to consider. That's why the macro does matter. I know people say macro doesn't matter, but like you go risk on and we don't get rate cuts, risk on becomes risk off, or at least it gets delayed to become risk on again, which means multiple expansion doesn't easily happen, no matter how good the earnings are for any of these companies. Because any of these companies can put up good earnings. Their multiples have priced that in. Tesla has priced in a lot of good news. So is Palantir. So is Rocket Lab. The companies that haven't, ironically, are the Mag 7, which is why, the fact that the market has not priced in Meta or Nvidia or Microsoft, and all of them are trading at 20 times earnings next year, that to me makes them the easiest buys, as boring as that is. Because in a market like this, when there's so much volatility, maybe the high beta growth, especially if rate cuts are being pushed out a couple months, might not be the easiest thing to buy right now. Where's the Dow Jones? Dow Jones is down, 1,000 points today. Goodness gracious. 47,839 on the Dow, 673.50 on the S&P. S&P implied volatility rank has reached 30%, the highest we've seen since November 2025. The past 4 times we've crossed the 20% rank, SPY has reversed to 690 within 2 days, which actually makes a lot of sense. The past couple times we've had this much volatility, the VIX right there, 22% up on the day now. The last time we've seen that happen, 2 days later, we recovered. Literally the last time that happened was February 5th. And then the more meaningful time that happened where we kind of experienced it for the first time in a while was back in November, right before Thanksgiving. VIX right there, up 16%. So it's not crazy to imagine that doesn't continue, or that trend doesn't continue. But if it doesn't, we might have some broader problems. 673 S&P. Let's see if we fall below 672. Micron right there at 386. That is also down about 6%. Adobe is getting hit. That's also actually Adobe is turning red. Is turning red. 672 on the S&P. Wow, full 2% on the S&P. Yeah, look, every level that you have on most of these stocks, they're going to get taken out today if the S&P continues to be below these moving averages. I'm actually surprised Hood is holding at 74. It's down only 4% on the day. But lots of these names are just getting wrecked. Grab down 5. Hims down 3. Hims was up 10 5 minutes ago. Tesla testing below 390. Sofi getting ready to go below 18 again. Lemonade below 6. Meta was just at 652. Now it's at 646. Opendoor down 5.7%. AMD's down 4%. Mercado Libre is down 6% even after that insider buy. Apple down almost 1%. Now we're feeling the worst of the pain, at least as the market has opened. 20 minutes in. VIX 2643. VIX is up 24%. Oracle down 3, Amcor down 6. Yeah, at this point, it's not even individual stocks that are going red. It's everything. S&P officially down more than 2%. And once everything goes red, there's kind of nowhere to hide. VG giving a little bit of safety. ASTS, a little bit of safety here. But other than that, it's still pretty ugly. Nvidia, ironically, is not doing that bad. The S&P, when's the last time the S&P's been down 2% and Nvidia's only down 1.8%? Usually Nvidia trades at about a 3x beta, which would have Nvidia down at least 5%, if not 6 or 7%. The fact that it's almost 180 is actually very encouraging. But we have to see if that trend continues. Target is green. Yup. IWM is down. Small caps getting wrecked today. That's down 4%. How about Walmart? That is almost green. Costco is green. Target is green. Home Depot is red, and Lowe's is red. Okay, so Lowe's and Home Depot, I think, are being pegged as, home buying plays, and the housing market obviously is frozen right now. But Walmart and Target are kind of being seen more as consumer discretionary plays. And I think that's why they're getting a defensive bid. McDonald's, how about that? McDonald's is almost green. Almost green. Microsoft, also almost green, but still down 1%. It is recovering a little bit. Wow, South Korea is just continuing to get wrecked. New lows, folks, 128.70. Is anyone buying the dip on the Koreans? And it's very important to remember this. We've talked about this many times, but the South Koreans are degenerates. Objectively, they are degenerates. They buy the most risk-on assets. They go super leveraged on perpetual futures when it comes to crypto. They literally have events where people live trade futures in front of them. They treat it as like esports. I mean, the South Koreans go heavy. Palantir and Tesla, the top 5 places that they're traded in, South Korea. So it's one of those things where you could imagine if the index itself was being levered up by a lot of retail investors, the downside is also going to be pretty ugly unless people step in. Now down 13% on the day. Also, IONQ. Yeah, there is an entire YouTube channel that has 150,000 subscribers of a guy who talks about IONQ every single day, and it's tailored towards South Koreans. And look, I don't know that much about IONQ, but this is a pretty volatile and risky quantum name. So it goes to show you the appetite of the South Korean community. And that's fine. If they like risky names, they like them. But if you're going to have leverage in the system and you have any level of a circuit breaker, in this case triggered by LNG exports from Iran to South Korea, then it could get kind of ugly to the downside. Archer right there, down a full 10% on the day. Samsung as well, down 10%. Nvidia, 179.17. Their market live streams like yours have like 30,000 people watching live. Yeah, I would imagine, dude. There's there's probably plenty of need for market coverage in South Korea. And it's cool. I mean, that's why Palantir hosted that like pop-up shop in South Korea for the merch giveaway. Carp went, and like there's just, I think we showed that video like months ago, but there were like literally hundreds and hundreds of people gathered together because of how deep they are into Palantir. They take risks. It's just that leverage, can also get a bit aggressive when it spikes up. S&P trying to get a little bounce, but really not succeeding. Still down 1.93. It was down 2.2. Wall Street Journal, wow. Trump open to supporting armed militias in Iran. Holy crap. Oh my. We were talking about boots on the ground, folks. It might not be U.S. boots. It might be Iranian boots. But you kind of can't have a regime change without some boots being on the freaking ground. Trump open to supporting armed militias in Iran. I'll see if we can get some more updates on that. That's what the Wall Street Journal is reporting. I mean, if Trump comes out and tweets that he's ready to support armed militias, goodness gracious, dude. Kind of thinks that has to happen too. Like the idea that we just bomb them and that changes everything. I mean, it's just unlikely. It's incredibly unlikely. OpenAI and Pentagon add surveillance protections to the AI deal. Sam Altman is not good at PR. I don't know if anyone knew that, but Sam Altman is not good at PR. Yesterday, he put out this long-ass Bill Ackman tweet, basically trying to clarify why they're working with the Department of War. But it was almost like I mean, it was almost like if you were a lawyer, the tweet was like valuable. If you're not a lawyer, it was just him talking about the technical jargon of like the wording of the contract. And everyone's just like, dude, like you're letting the government do what they want. Anthropic's not. Now, maybe that's not actually the truth, but the perception, which is reality often, is, hey, you guys are just letting the government do what they want, and it is what it is, and you guys took the money. Now, again, I think that's not exactly true. There's nuance to that, but I mean, OpenAI is not doing a good job explaining why exactly they took this contract. CrowdStrike right there, that's down 1%. And also, I mean, Sam Altman even admitted on that tweet that he was wrong for taking the deal on Friday and announcing it. He should have waited a couple days because it was too early. So he did acknowledge it was a mistake to announce it that quickly. But they are now trying to adopt more formal formal language on this. Farzad, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on yesterday. Amit, appreciate you. Farzad, appreciate you as well. Got a ton of messages after you came on. People were really happy that you were able to express your views. And, I think the conversation with Farzad was important because he is from the region and he was able to explain ultimately the emotions that people have about this regime finally collapsing. But Farzad's also a never war guy. And, he is not a fan of war. He is the opposite of a neocon. Nebius right there down 4%. And so his perspective was, hey, I'm happy that the Ayatollah is dead, but I also don't exactly know how he would instill some level of meaningful regime change. But I think the biggest thing I got from Farzad was that the Iranian people have a lot of courage and ambition to get this job done. The question is, the process, which is probably the most important question, but the ambition to take over and have some level of a new government that is there in Iran. Tesla right there, 390, as that one is now getting hit. VIX high of the day, 2650 on the VIX, is up almost 25% on the day as well. S&P down 2. The Qs are down 2 as well. S&P holding on for dear life at 672.50. We touched 672.20, which was very close to the pre-market lows that we hit. As well. 672.40 right here. Wow. Michael Burry buys Adobe. I wonder if that is enough to pump the stock. Michael Burry initiates long position in Adobe. All right, for all my Adobe folks, Burry is on your side. Burry is on your side. I think our boy Chris is in Adobe. So you got Chris and Burry now on the same long. By the way, this is the quote from the Wall Street Journal. Trump is open to supporting groups in Iran willing to take up arms and dislodge the regime, U.S. officials said, an idea that could turn Iranian factions into ground forces, at least rhetorically, backed by Washington. Yeah, okay, so Trump is recognizing, if this is correct, that U.S. officials gave the Wall Street Journal this quote, they are absolutely recognizing airstrikes are not enough. They're going to have to back rebels that are on the streets and support boots on the ground, even if U.S. boots don't hit the ground, which, ultimately makes sense. But that would be another turning point in this war, if that's the route they're going to take. Adobe right there, 262.94. S&P very close to the absolute low. Wow, we broke 672. We hit 671.95. Bounced really quick when we touched it. But we did indeed hit 671.95 on the day. All right, so who's buying Adobe now? This is a classic Burry long, to be honest. It is cheap. We know it's cheap. It's obviously undervalued. The growth is not exceptional, but some companies don't need exceptional growth if they're deeply, deeply undervalued. The narrative around they don't have an AI mode, and Canva and Figma have better offerings. I think that's a real bear narrative, but it hasn't reflected in the numbers, so it's more of a perceptual narrative than an empirical narrative. So I don't think it's crazy that Burry's buying it, but it's interesting. That's the SaaS name he's going for. Adobe. Out of all the SaaS names, that's what he's going for. IGV still down 1.3%. That's a way to tell me you're broke. You might as well buy PayPal. PayPal bottomed at 39, hopefully, and it's made a little bit of a run, even though the acquisition rumors might have ended up being fake. Adobe hasn't had earnings yet either, so he's doing this strategically. He's buying before earnings. He's expecting probably some level of change on the earnings. And, maybe that is what inspires people to go long here. Should have bought Salesforce. Well, Salesforce did initiate that $50 billion buyback, which I think is also very supportive. But it would surprise me if Adobe doesn't come out and say, hey, we are increasing our buyback. Mike Johnson, got a quote from him. Let's listen to what he's saying right here about the war.
Most critical point is that this was a defensive measure, a defensive operation. And why is that? I took some notes, and this is not classified, so I'll tell you what I think is important. Israel was determined to act in their own defense here, with or without American support. Why? Because Israel faced what they deemed to be an existential threat. Iran was building missiles at a radical and a rapid clip to the point where our allies in the region could not keep up. As you know, Iran has long vowed to take out Israel, wipe it off the map, and they have long seen that as a critical threat to their very existence. Because Israel was determined to act with or without the U.S., our commander-in-chief and the administration and the officials I just named had a very difficult decision to make.
Wow. I mean, there you go. Same thing Rubio said. Because Israel was going to act without our input, we had a decision to make. And looks like they decided to join.
They had to evaluate the threats to the U.S., to our troops, to our installations, to our assets in the region and beyond. And they determined, because of the exquisite intelligence that we had, that if Israel fired upon Iran and took action against Iran to take out the missiles, then they would have immediately retaliated against U.S. personnel and assets. We have troops in harm's way, and we have many Americans in the region, and that was of a great concern. If we had waited for all of those eventualities to take place, the consequences of inaction on our part could have been devastating. We don't know at what magnitude, but you can assume, because it is common sense, that if Iran had begun to fire all of their missile arsenal, short and mid-range missiles, at our personnel and our assets and our installations, we would have suffered staggering losses. And if we had waited to respond before acting first, then those losses would have been far greater than if we had done what we did.
All right. I mean, look, it's something a lot of people speculated as well. And, you know, the truth claim of his argument is logical, which is that, hey, if there is no way we can convince the other guys to not act, then we have to make a decision. And in this case, the decision was we have to get involved, because if we don't act and we know they're going to get involved, then we have to do something. Having said that, I think a lot of the MAGA base would want the decision to go the opposite direction. Meaning, okay, maybe you can't control Israel from doing what they're going to do. They're a sovereign nation. If they're ready to attack, then they're going to attack. And if you don't have the negotiating skills to get Netanyahu to not agree to that, then okay, you can't do that. But do you have to get involved? And based on the administration stance, their argument is, hey, we have to get involved. And so I think that's going to be the question in the midterms now over the next 9 months is like, did we have to get involved, or, you know, should the United States have let Israel fight themselves? And obviously, from Trump's perspective, he's probably thinking, all right, if there's another big ass war in the Middle East that implicates oil prices, implicates domestic policy, then probably we would get involved anyway. And as a result, you know, they decide to go in. Micron down 7%. But you do have this narrative as well that says, okay, hey, maybe you didn't need to do this, and, you know, Israel could have fought it themselves. And I think that's going to be the conflicting narratives going back and forth over the coming weeks and months going into the midterms. CrowdStrike right there down 2%, as that is also getting hit. Palo Alto, that's officially going red. SanDisk, that's down 7% on the day. SPY, we lost 671 two times, folks. 672.39. We did lose it two times. 671.80. Oh, we just lost it a third time. There you go. At this point, 671.50. If we lose that meaningfully, then we are absolutely going lower. Microsoft 393. VIX continuing to spike. 2664. That is up 25%. How do you think OpenAI is going to evolve with the military involvement because of Palantir? Well, remember, OpenAI's models are primarily rooted inside of a software that allows them to actually be implemented, aka Foundry. So the cool thing about Palantir is that they're model agnostic. They build AI infrastructure, and then whatever models you use inside of that infrastructure, Palantir doesn't really care about, whether it's Claude, Anthropic, or OpenAI, Gemini. So I think OpenAI and Palantir are probably going to have a very synergistic relationship working with the government. Now, are there some contracts that they might compete on? Yeah, but again, you know, OpenAI is selling the model. Palantir is selling the infrastructure that makes the model useful. If OpenAI wants to get into that part of the business, then yes, there's more competition. But outside of that, I actually don't think it's going to be that difficult for them to work together. Home Depot, that one's down another 2%. Silver's getting wrecked today. I think that's actually the worst out of everything. Wow, 11% on silver. Yeah, folks, I think that's the worst today. SLV down 11, spot silver down 9.5. Gold down 4.53. I mean, this is just not safe havens for anything. Unless you bought it last year, like aping into the metals, I I don't think it's worth the drama. Like, there's so many easier things to buy in the stock market that actually are more predictable in terms of where they could go versus silver and gold. I don't know. Now, if you have silver and gold from a year ago, maybe it's not a sell, right? Maybe these things aren't collapsing 50%, but if your entry price are these spot prices after a 5x run on silver, remember, silver was $20 October 2024. Maybe it's not the easiest buy. Costco's still green. Yep, gold is down about 2% on the day. Yeah, like BMNR as well. I agree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, a crypto is not safe right now, and the precious metals are not safe either, which means all the assets that are associated with them, whether it's the crypto miners or the crypto proxies or the gold miners, silver miners. I mean, people saying the gold miners are undervalued. It's like, yeah, technically they're undervalued, but if the price of gold goes down, it doesn't matter how undervalued they are. Like, they're going to take a hit, just like gold is. These are theoretically, I mean, you would think gold and silver are not risk-on assets, but I feel like they've become risk-on assets at this point. And so all risk-on is experiencing haircuts across the board. HIM's right there, still down 5.6%. Amazon taking an ugly hit as well, down about $5. 2.3. Maybe meme coins are the last safe haven. Where is the Trump meme coin? That is now worth $3. It is down 78% in the past year. Where's Fartcoin, bro? We haven't checked on Fartcoin in so long. Fartcoin is still worth $158 million. Okay, it's worth 15 cents. We were tracking this in 2024. I think it hit $2 billion in market cap at one point. There's still $158 million of people that have invested and believe in Fartcoin. So maybe things haven't got bad enough. The ultimate recession indicator, by the way, we don't see it in the BLS. We don't see it in the jobs data. We don't see it in CPI. We don't see it in PCE. S&P right here, once again, losing 672. The ultimate actual recession indicator that I've discovered over the past 24 hours, by the way, Aero Environment, nice 9% bounce after the 25% downturn yesterday. The ultimate recession indicator is Floyd Mayweather coming out of retirement and agreeing to do 3 fights in 1 year. Apparently, this guy owes a lot of people money. Okay? Apparently, this guy owes a lot of people money. He's fighting Manny Pacquiao. He's fighting Mike Tyson. He agreed to another fight yesterday. I think his total earnings throughout his career were $1.2 billion. I don't know how you lose $1.2 billion, but it seemed like no one comes out of retirement at 50 years old and does 3 fights in less than a year unless they owe people some money. So I think that's the actual recession. Like, if he needs money, like, his brand was called the Money Team, right? TMT. Like, this guy was all about money. And it's kind of crazy that he needs to keep fighting. SPY right there, 672, still down 2%. Nvidia is doing well. I mean, it is really holding up. Like, a 2% drawdown on SPY should be 5 to 6% minimum on Nvidia. Minimum. Nvidia is 8% of the S&P. The fact that people are actually holding it up today is very encouraging. And that one is holding down. Yeah, maybe he bought Bitcoin at 120. Maybe. Reuters reporter from Tehran just tweeted, "I'm writing to you from the heart of Tehran. We're going through terrifying nights and days. Our spirits are strong, but the stress, anxiety, and terror of the explosions after that trauma and 2 months of grief are beyond our capacity. End it sooner." Wow. Once again, someone saying that this war is tough, but the anxiety of the trauma after the protests that they were engaged in for the past 2 months was worse. I mean, you're just seeing that sentiment from a variety of Iranian people. We also had another video that went a little viral last night as well. Let me show this. This is from another person who's from Iran. She does say the F word in this, so if you have kids, maybe you can mute for the next minute. But this is another video that has been going pretty viral about how some of these Iranians think about the war.
I am an Iranian who lives in Tehran, and I can hear the sound of bombing outside. In case I'm dead tomorrow, I just want you to remember this. Please, shut the fuck up and don't use me against America or Israel to try and convince them to stop. We asked for this. We want this attack. And I know that you don't want to listen to us. You don't want to listen, but I'm going to give you the shorter version of why we want this. The reason is we had one option to go and protest this bloody regime, and we did, and they killed 40,000 of us in 2 days. This is the last option we have. We asked for the help, and help is here. And I know I might die, and I don't care because I'm willing to sacrifice my life for Iran. And you just shut the fuck up and don't use me to attack anyone or try to stop this. We want this. You don't understand. You're not in our shoes. So shut the fuck up. That was a message from one of our Iranian sisters, and she asked me to share this with you. So shut the fuck up. Yeah, if you don't want to support us, just shut the fuck up.
I mean, look, I thought that was pretty interesting because once again, it comes down to the same view, which is at least the perspective that I've had over the past couple of days, which is that when I listen to the Iranian people, they want this to happen. They have been tortured by a bloody regime. They wanted help. But the history of the United States, quote unquote, helping doesn't necessarily lead to any level of meaningful change. And we have enough history to kind of justify that things don't work out when the US tries to easily get involved. And I think you can have that perspective. You're allowed to be kind of in the middle of, hey, I have sympathy for these people that want freedom because as a United States citizen, I have freedom, and freedom is very nice to have. In the midst of all the shit that's wrong with the US, the ability to not be tortured by your own regime definitely is something that you have to be grateful for. And as I get older, I get more grateful every day. But at the same time, I know that our regime, aka the government trying to topple other regimes, historically has not worked out. And so I think that's the nuance here. And I don't exactly know how this ends up getting resolved, but as of now, it seems like a broader proxy war that might instill into boots on the ground, even if they are Iranian boots and not US boots. Microsoft right there is still down 1%. Nvidia almost pushing 180, 179.80. It's trying to push, but still just below that $80 level. Please stop drinking coffee since you did the war started. It's my fault, dude. It is absolutely my fault. Is the war official yet? No, it is not officially declared as a war. It's declared as a special military operation. Ondas down 2.4. That is also still red. The war on instant coffee. Yeah, you guys have absolutely launched the war on instant coffee. Grab right there, still down 5. C Limited down 25. Nubank down 5. Hoodie down 6. ASTS continues to kind of hold up in the midst of this. Netflix is at 96. ASTX at 90. At least that one is holding 90.5. Okay, what else? Do we have macro headlines today? Let's see. It's 10:15. I don't think we have any crazy headlines. Do we get any data? No data today. We're going to have some Fed talk later throughout the day. Fed President Williams will be speaking. We'll see what he says. We have some other Fed talk already. Fed President Schmid says open to possibility that AI could drive non-inflationary growth, but we're not there yet. Also, Schmid says inflation is hot, demand is outpacing supply. Dude, these Fed presidents are convinced that inflation is going to be an issue. And I get the PPI data was bad. I get the PCE data was bad. Silver, by the way, down 10.3. But I feel like none of them outside of Warsh and Waller are actually thinking of economic deflation as a result of AI. And maybe the evidence is not fully there yet. But then again, Square fired 4,000 people. Amazon fired 30,000 people. Yeah, some of it was probably overhiring, but you can't tell me some of those managers are not looking at the jobs and thinking, we don't need someone to do this. Like, we can do it with AI. And we haven't even had the robotic stuff start yet. So, I mean, it is weird that they're not thinking about that at all. And just looking at the headline data. Nvidia right there, 179.40. Do you think there will be inflation if oil prices stay elevated? So that is the caveat. Yes, I do think inflation will start to persist if oil prices stay elevated. And that could kind of combat any level of deflation narrative. However, The question then becomes, does demand also get hit, right? Because as soon as prices start going up, you're going to see some inevitable demand shock. And, if people realize they have to pay an extra $100 for their airline ticket, they might not go travel, which would be bad for United Airlines earnings, which would be bad for the stock market, but it doesn't necessarily mean that inflation immediately ticks up. Now, if we print a lot of money and give it to people to give them the ability to pay for these inflated prices, which is what we did in 2020, then shit could hit the fan. But hopefully we're not necessarily there yet. Wow, S&P 671.50. That is the low of the day. VIX is at 27. Last time we had a 25% day on the VIX was November. Even February 5th was not 25%. It was about 15. It was at 17%. It was November. I'm looking at it right now. It was indeed November 21st. Around November 2021st. So this is the first time we've seen this elevated volatility. And by the way, we felt 5% on the S&P during that time over, I think, about 5 days. So we've done half of that in 1 day so far. 671 S&P. Let's pull up the heat map. Gold and silver continuing to dump. Heat map, wow. Close your eyes if you don't want to see some red. The only thing that's green here is Costco, Verizon, and AT&T. I mean, this is what I think people expected yesterday, right? And we're not seeing that. That's pretty red, right? That's pretty freaking red. VIX 27.12. She's just moving higher. Adobe somehow is green. And then Nvidia, I really think Nvidia should be down a lot more, but it's not. We lost 671. Okay, here it goes, folks. We lose 670. We're going to be seeing a 669 handle for the first time since November if we lose it here. Red light therapy, exactly. Red light therapy. Apollo CEO, expect a correction in private markets. There will be a shakeout in investment markets. Great. Thank you, Mr. Apollo CEO. Apollo down 6% on the day. The private credit bubble is absolutely real. The question is, how ugly is it going to be? And, the people that think it's going to be like 50% drawdowns across all private equities or private credit parts of equity, I disagree with, because I think there's going to be a way that KKR and Apollo finagle themselves into not taking that big of a loss. But to say that companies that were funded in 2018 and 2021, especially the software companies that were funded, that kind of have their entire business models get upended, Apollo and KKR, they're going to have to take some losses on that. And if the CEO himself is saying expect a correction in private markets, I mean, that will happen. It's just how bad will it be? The regionals, I think, are also a not touch because of this. I mean, the regionals, if there is a contagion effect, even if it's in private credit, which the regionals don't have that much exposure to private credit. I think the regionals have more exposure to commercial real estate than they do to private credit. The good thing is the companies that have a lot of exposure to private credit are the big banks, because they're the ones that are okay with financing these private equity firms. And JP Morgan can survive it, but it's not going to help JP Morgan long term. We are at fear and greed 30, folks. Fear and greed 30. Okay, I mean, that's what we said. Do we get below 30? Nope, we are now below 30. 29. This was the lowest. This was the lowest since, well, let's just look at the timeline. Last time we were at 29 was, December. We were recovering from that November slump. Even on February 5th, we actually did it. We only hit 38. So this is the lowest we've hit in a while on fear and greed. Jane Street is hitting. There are some people speculating Jane Street moved on from Bitcoin to silver as their new choice of assets to manipulate. I don't know. I mean, that's just obviously all speculation, but wouldn't it be so funny if Jane Street was like, all right, we can't mess with Bitcoin anymore. We're going to go to the other thing that is supposed to not be degenerate. It's supposed to be a safe haven, but if everyone wants to trade it, then sure, we'll come play the game. and then move to silver. SanDisk down 9%. Memory taking a hit. If you drink one more cup of coffee, it's war. The coffee's cold now, so I can't even drink it. Dude, every day I have to throw out this coffee in the sink. Not drink. I take my one sip and that's it. That's it for the day. VIX 2779. Corning, that is also down 9%. AMD quote, our relationship with OpenAI is better than it's ever been. Nothing has changed with the overall deal structure. We feel great about that relationship. OpenAI and AMD relationships are special. I'm reading from the Morgan Stanley TMT conference. They had AMD there this morning. AMD says we made significant progress in the data center and AI space, and we are excited about the positioning of MI450 as well. Is AMD below 190? AMD is absolutely below 190, 189.16. Amit makes instant coffee for the memes, not to drink. How dare you think that I am making instant coffee for the memes? I'm obviously making it to drink something in the morning, okay? The idea that I would make instant coffee for the pure joke of making it is asinine. Okay, it's quite incredible. Someone would accuse me of that. Wow, S&P, she loses 670. She lost 670. 669.88. VIX officially is at 28. Okay. Do we actually go lower than this? 2.3% down, 16 points on the S&P. The fact that ASTS and Aero Environment are green are a testament to how much people want to uphold those names. Apollo down 6%. SPY down 2.34. Did Burry buy Adobe? Yes. Burry bought Adobe. Adobe still slightly green. ServiceNow is down 1.3. Bill McDermott did buy his $3 million worth of stock yesterday. SPX 6720 right there. Down 2.34. Remind us when the circuit breaker gets hit. I think the circuit breaker is above 5%, if I'm not wrong. Right? When does the circuit breaker hit for the market? I mean, some people say it's like 10%, but Gemini says 7%. The technical level is 7%. In 15-minute halts, when the market drops 7%, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's -7. That's true. 5% is a pullback, not really a circuit breaker. 10% is full-on correction. But 7% is when they try to stop it. Okay, we've got a long way to go before we see 7%. Dude, we see 7% down from here. What's that? We're at, 670? That would be another 5%. That would be 636. That would be eliminating a majority of the gains of 2025. That would be quite ugly. So I don't think that happens that easily, but below 670, given we were just there, is not that crazy to see. AMD still down 5, ServiceNow down 2. If we saw 7%, we would literally be crying. I don't know. Does this feel worse than November? Because look, it's been ugly, but I don't think it feels worse than November. Just like the past month and a half of dealing with this. November was 5 days of hell. I mean, November literally felt like 5 days of hell. It was that it was right before Thanksgiving too. It was not fun. But this has been more, I don't know, it's ugly, but I feel like a lot of people have been pretty zen through it. And the question is just like, how ugly does it get? Because it can get really ugly soon if we see another 2 to 3% down. Because again, 2 or 3% on the index means 10 to 15% on individual names. That's the tough reality of the high beta names. Mercado Libre down 6% right there. It's worse. Somebody's saying it's not as worse. Fat says my covered calls are printing. Yeah, dude, I've been running covered calls on Nvidia pretty successfully for the past 3 weeks, and I am loving it. And again, it depends when you started your position, right? If you I bought Nvidia, basically created my entire position around DeepSeek. So my average is 125. So even if the shares were to get called away, like I don't want them to, but like if they were, I'm not like the most upset, but they don't get called away because The covered calls keep printing. So it is a way to really reduce my cost basis. And I do think it's something to employ on people that have big holdings of a lot of stock. Like, if this market is willing to pay you premium and then just go down, then you might as well take the premium. S&P, once again, losing 670. Once again, losing 670. Okay, for the people saying this feels worse, why? What would be the one sentence explanation this feels worse? Because technically, we're not even in a 5% pullback yet. In November, we had a 5% pullback, which I think further exaggerated the downside, because once you have a full 5%, things get really ugly. So we haven't had that yet. But the choppiness, I could argue, is why this feels a lot worse. And I think a lot of people would argue. Because in November, we were just going straight up until we didn't. And so it was kind of like people expected some type of a dip. But in February, every week, we would recover by Friday and then dump on Monday. And I think that's, from an emotional perspective, that's what made a lot of people feel worse. It's a slower drip because he can't taco it. Dude, that is so true. There's no taco anymore. He could taco tariffs. He's not tacoing an Iran war. I mean, technically, he could say, all right, we're done, we're leaving, which I don't think would necessarily result in regime change. But yeah, this can't be tacoed. That is a good point. That is a good point. Even quality has been getting hit, not just high beta, especially with the combined SAS sell-off. That is also a good point. SAS kind of was an additional layer of red that November didn't have. And unfortunately, every day we have to experience that as well. Oh boy. Pam Bondi really top ticked this thing, bro. Like, we have not really been above 50,000 after she proclaimed to Congress how important it was to hit 50,000 on the Dow. But regardless, this is what we're experiencing. SPY down 2.4, low of the day. VIX keeps up. Why is Ondas dumping? Again, I'm confused about that as well. I thought the drone stocks would continue catching a bid, but Ondas is more high beta than drone, which is why piling into the quote-unquote defensives, oil, drones, energy, etc., just because of the war, after they run, I mean, again, the time to do that was last week. I don't think the time to do that is today or yesterday. And if you did yesterday, unfortunately, they're getting hit right here. So I really do I think at least the strategy I'm deploying is buy what you know, what you truly, I think the 3-part strategy is buy what you absolutely know. This is not the time to be like, oh, memory looks cheap. It's like, do you know anything about memory? No? Okay. So if it looks cheap, it can get cheaper. So stick with what you know. Number 2, make sure what you know is cheap, because you might know Rocket Lab really well, but trading at 60 times sales is not necessarily cheap. I know a lot of people get mad at me for saying that, but it's just the objective truth, right? I hope Rocket Lab goes up from here, but I own Rocket Lab. But at the end of the day, same thing with Palantir. I should just keep using Palantir as my example, because everyone gets mad when I use something. But Palantir is not cheap, okay? It's trading at 400 times earnings. There might be a reason for that, and Iran might have figured that out over the weekend, but nonetheless, it's not cheap. So buy what you know, make sure what you know is cheap, and then third, I think sell some covered calls on it. I think generate some income, because if the market's going to keep staying in this choppy range, that is literally utopia for covered calls. I mean, it's like literally what you're asking for when it comes to yielding volatility. If you don't know about covered calls, I will link a video in the chat. I did an entire 3-hour seminar on it last year. Do not buy a course, please. You don't have to. This stuff is not that complicated. And I think that's the way to at least manage the volatility right now. At least that's what I'm deploying. I'm buying the stuff I know, like Nvidia. I think Nvidia is cheap, and then I'm running covered calls on it to generate some premium, knowing that some of my shares might get called away. You've got to be willing to let some of your shares get called away. You can't be afraid if we V-shape and Nvidia's at 250 tomorrow, and you're like, oh my god, my shares. It's like, no, you sold the covered call for a reason. Granted, I think you can roll the call, and you don't necessarily have to get trapped. But also, like, if this is the market environment where the market's willing to give you that momentum of volatility. Like yesterday, if you sold calls on Nvidia yesterday when it was at 183, you got a lot of juicy premium for it to only go down 2% today. And someone bought those calls from you because they thought everything was okay, which means you had to be okay with potentially leaving those shares. But as a hedge, it's not that crazy to say, hey, I don't trust that 183 is going to turn to 193 overnight. And so I'm going to sell the 187 call. And if people want to buy it, be my guest. I'll roll it if it runs up. If it doesn't, then I'll keep the premium. JP Morgan trying to recover a little bit back up to 297, but still right on the day. Regionals still down 2.6. This could be a footnote within 6 weeks. I'm just going to stay long and hibernate through the noise. Yeah, and look, that's also a very fair strategy. Just imagining this thing changes, especially because we're only 2 months into the year. And March is, historically one of the best months of the year. But, if you are waiting, I think there are opportunities to deal with waiting. I just don't know if it's the right time to get into an entirely new industry and, start dumpster diving for a bunch of different stuff. I feel like you stick with what you know right now. And the thing about January is it prompted so many people to look at so many different industries because we had so many different sectors that were just literally going to the moon. Again, ASTS was up 130% that month. AVAV, Aero Environment, was up 65% in 10 days. January was crazy. And it got a lot of people into these names, but it doesn't necessarily mean the fundamentals on those names are not only intact, but if people even know what exactly those fundamentals are. Apple right there, 262, as that one continues to go red. What expiry would you sell? I sell weeklies, always weekly. I think this market is too volatile to trust that you can sell a covered call a month out and, within a month, nothing happens. It's I think you got to monitor the situation every single week. And that's where you would sell those calls. Microsoft, 395. Microsoft, 395. Would you consider spreads on SoFi here? I had spreads. SoFi was the stock I first did spreads on back in it was the second stock. TFC was the first one. It was back in 2023, and I was up 30 grand, and I got so greedy, and I didn't take profits. And 30 grand at that time to me was it was I had never seen just 30 grand pop up out of nowhere in an option because SoFi, just went crazy for a day. And then it collapsed, and I ended up exiting with $1,000. So the reason I bring that up is I don't really trust SoFi at all when it comes to hitting price targets. And it's not just because of that experience. It's because, unfortunately, the narrative on this name is not an easy narrative to control. The reason spreads on Hood worked is because the narrative was intact, crypto was intact, and you can just ride it up. That narrative is not the same anymore. Hood down 7% today, so I wouldn't do spreads on Hood either. Same thing with SoFi. Even if they get into the S&P 500, that's a temporary bump. Spreads that would be meaningful would be around $30. To think this thing is going to get to 30 that easily is not something I'm willing to trust, even though fundamentally I think it deserves to be $30. So yeah, I don't like options on any of these stocks. Now, again, if you have the balls, this is the time to buy the options, right? This is when there's blood in the streets. So that's when you get the excess leverage. But we haven't even had a 5% correction on SPY. That's the thing that I think also is holding a lot of people back. As choppy as it's been, we have not had an actual 5% drawdown. So, how do you get super excited to think that things can't get worse? Not saying they have to get worse, but that's part of the reason I kind of want the 5% draw. It's just get it over with. Let the market factor in, okay, we had a pullback, and then we move on. But this prolonged nonsense going back and forth is not fun. Gold right there down 4%. Silver still down 9%. That correction did happen to me. Oh, trust me, that correction happened to me too. But hasn't happened on the index level. What do you mean by spread? So he's talking about call debit spreads. It's when you buy a call and sell a call on top of each other. It's essentially another way to go long a stock and increase your leverage towards it by not having to pay the same amount of premium you would have to pay by buying a call option outright. But whether it's buying a call debit spread, even though the spread hedges some of your downside, if you pick a spread to $30, SoFi better hit 30 for you to actually see the gains, or at least close to 30, which again, I think it will get to. But do I want to put a time limit on that? No, not in this market, which is why shares are probably the better option. Microsoft right there at 395 as well. Are you going for the RVI allocation? No, I really do not like that. I've been honest about this. I don't like the valuations in the Robinhood Ventures Fund. I think it's a good thing they're doing it. I do not like the valuations on any of those names. And I think those valuations will be able to be elevated enough for the fund to do well. I think it's going to IPO in a couple of days. But I don't like Databricks at 130, 40 billion. I don't like Stripe at 160 billion. And now look, it doesn't matter what I think. If the markets want to give them those valuations, the market's going to give them those valuations. And if we get into a bull market, those valuations probably, if we turn more bullish, 7,000, those valuations will be more than justified. But I don't like them, dude. I really don't. I just don't think if those stocks were public, they would get the valuations that they were getting in the private markets. Netflix, that's still down, and then Amazon, that's down 2%. Speaking of Robinhood, though, we do have a couple of updates, and this stuff is really bullish. They were at a conference yesterday. Net deposits for Robinhood were $5.5 billion in February. Again, just the fact that this company gets $5 billion every month into their platform is crazy. So Q1 total net deposits are $10 billion. Second of all, they said that, remember they had 400 million of banking deposits because they unveiled banking last month. They now have 800 million. That doubled in under 3 weeks. 50% of that is direct deposit. That is the real bull case this year for Robinhood, not crypto. The bull case is, can they get to 10 billion in deposits, 50% of that being direct deposit in their banking product, which they basically just did $1 billion in 6 weeks. So they're on a run rate where they should be able to get to 10 billion by the end of the year easily. And if they do, I think that would be also very, very exciting for Hood. They also said crypto volumes were up from January, and then equities and options were up year over year. So February looks like it was a decent month, but as of right now, the market is still treating them as a crypto proxy, which is why this thing has been getting hit, down 6.5%. VIX right here down a little bit from 27. It was at 28.15. We're now at 27.06, which is why you're seeing SPY get a very slight bounce from 669. Look, VIX 30 is usually you buy the dip. Once again, I think you apply a framework of buying the dip on something you like, and that you think has a reasonable multiple. But VIX 30 usually is buy the dip. We hit VIX 28. So, I mean, we got pretty damn close. Do we get back up there and officially see 30 on the VIX? I don't know, but we did get pretty damn close at 28. SPY now above 672 after falling to 669. ELF is down another 2%. Nike's down 3.4. Tesla 386. That's down 4.5. And more of the Max 7s are getting hit. Can you show us an example of an Nvidia covered call you think is valuable? I feel like the premium is tiny and not worth it based on the value of the shares you'd be selling. Yeah, so a lot of this is really subjective when it comes to covered calls. So, I mean, look, if you buy Nvidia stock at 177 and you sell a covered call at 180, you're going to get some good premium because 180 is very close to 177. So let's say you get $3 a premium, your exit price is 183. You have to ask yourself, are you comfortable with losing the Nvidia shares you bought at 177 at 183? And if you're not, then you don't sell the call, right? Then you just buy the stock and you hold on to it. But if Nvidia is going to oscillate between 177 and 185, which is within your break even, then rolling the covered call every week is not going to be that complicated until it has a real bounce up, and you're going to be able to benefit from the volatility. But if you bought Nvidia at $100 and you don't mind selling it at 190, and you sell some covered calls every week for 190, even if it's not a lot of premium, you have to ask yourself, look, if I don't think Nvidia is going to get to 190 that soon, why am I leaving pennies on the table for all these people that are buying calls at 190? Then again, if Nvidia reverses and gets to 190, that's where the emotions have to come into place and be like, okay, I took the risk for a reason. I'm okay with some of my shares getting sold. And if it doesn't, then I benefit from the volatility. So I think it's really based on your cost basis. It's based on your appetite for risk. And it's also based on how choppy you think this market will be. Because 2025 was choppy. And then boom, 2025 after Liberation Day turned into a bull market. So the thing is, we have not had that sort of Liberation Day catalyst, which makes it obvious that we're going green, which is why I think we can stay choppy. But if we do, then yeah, the covered calls, are not going to be valuable compared to holding the stock. Zeta is going green on the day as well, 1746, as that one continues green. Microsoft very close to going green at 397. What amount is considered a good premium? Again, it depends on your risk tolerance. I mean, Nvidia covered calls can give you like 2% a week, which is 8% a month, which is not sustainable, by the way. It's everyone who tells you, oh, I can do 8% a month on covered calls, like, no, you might have 1 month where you get away with doing 8% or 5%, but realistically, if you can squeeze out 1 to 2% a month, I think in extra covered call income, that's reasonable. But if you want to be super aggressive and you're okay with shares getting called away, then yeah, you could do about 1 or 2% a week. You just have to be ready for those shares to get called away or to roll aggressively. And again, the reason I'm saying Nvidia is because I think, my perspective, Nvidia is closer than not to a bottom based on its multiple. Now, if the market collapses, Nvidia is going to go with it, 100%. But then the whole market will go with it as well. But from a pure fundamental perspective, Nvidia is just dirt cheap for the growth that they're putting up. And I don't see any other Mag 7 outside of Meta that even is close to that multiple, which is why I feel more confident doing it on Nvidia. Amazon still down 2. PayPal actually going kind of green. And then McDonald's still down 1% as well. Again, I'm going to link that video. If some of this stuff is going over people's heads, what I'm talking about, please watch this video. It's 3 hours. I think you will really value the video if you just don't know anything that I'm talking about. And then a lot of this will make a lot more sense. All right, we have another headline. Wow, second strike hits the Saudi embassy. Okay, so there were already a few strikes this morning in Riyadh. Wall Street Journal reporting now another strike has hit the Saudi embassy. That came out 2 minutes ago, folks. Second strike hits the Saudi embassy as Israel continues to strike Tehran and Beirut in widening conflict with Iran. Goodness, dude. Okay, so the Iranians going after Saudi is definitely not what you want to see right here. The prince is probably pissed off about this, and he's likely going to get his military involved if this continues, especially because they hit one of the oil refineries. And you're seeing, I guess, a lot more action around oil prices. Oil prices going up. Yep, oil prices right off that headline going higher. Wow. They are reacting right in real time. You got the Blackstone CEO speaking of private credit. Let's see what he's saying and where he thinks the broader credit market is going.
Lots of equity, and a sponsor like us who's looking out for shareholders every day, that's a pretty good place to be.
But I wonder if you get penalized, perhaps, and I can say this, I know you probably won't engage much on it, by the underwriting standards of competitors who may not have been quite as meticulous, perhaps, as you have been at Blackstone.
Well, it's hard to comment on what others have done, not only on what they've done underwriting, but how they've managed vehicles. And we've seen some of this in the past. We've seen dispersion of performance. If you go back to BREIT, which you and I spent a lot of time on.
We did.
The outcome for shareholders has been dramatically different. I mean, if you look at liquidity, if you look at performance, BREIT has delivered 65% above the public REIT market. Last year was almost triple at 8%. It's been paying out to shareholders now for the last couple of years. It's done exactly as advertised. And as bad as this is, and as painful as it is to watch the stock go down and all this negative press, ultimately, when we deliver for our underlying shareholders in this space, what we will see is they will be more loyal to Blackstone. If you look at our overall wealth platform for individuals at $300 billion, we have grown consistently. And so BREIT's back in a growth mode. We talked about that yesterday. It came out.
It has inflows. In fact, I do wonder, do you think that some of the RIAs who control this channel for the retail were taking people out of BCRED and putting them in BREIT?
Well, I don't know if that's happening dollar for dollar, but investors, when they get concerned about something, they may pause. I will tell you, interestingly, here in the first quarter, BREIT had its best inflows
First
going
time
back
since 22, I think.
positive,
right?
Best inflows since 22. Our private equity and infrastructure products for individual investors had their best inflows other than when they've had launch quarters. So there's a breadth and diversity to our firm. And I think people tend to forget that, and they say, oh, this thing's bad. They get very nervous. But we've got a great wealth platform. We continue to deliver for our institutional clients. Last year, we raised more than $230 billion.
This guy sounds nervous. This guy sounds like the rest of us, bro. last year we raised a ton of money. People shouldn't worry. It's like, bro, you might be holding on to some assets that are just not worth what they were perceived to be worth. Just like all of us. You know, you bought something that was much higher than what it is right now. It's going to create some nerves. The thing about private credit, though, is like, again, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars that are in these freaking funds. Private credit has the most incentive to make software come back to life. IGV now down 1%. But I mean, look, if you take them at face value, I don't think Blackstone, Apollo, or KKR are going out of business, but obviously people are just not excited to invest in those companies right now until they have more clarity. Now, there were some rumors last week about them stopping redemptions and withdrawals, and Blackstone came out and they're like, hey, that's not exactly what's happening. You guys are misinterpreting it. So once again, there's just a lot of confusion around where the private credit world is going. Silver, is that still down? Still down 9%. A little bounce on SPY, like minuscule. But we got once again rejected at 672.50 after a 669 move, and we're right back at 671. It just doesn't seem like she has all the juice in it. Bitcoin is actually doing better than the SPY today. Bitcoin back to 67.7, which is good. Maybe a leading indicator for what's to come. Nvidia now feeling more pain, down 2.5. Adobe holding on to its green. Where's GameStop? GameStop is down 2%. Microsoft, not really seeing any love. Yeah, see, it's like stupid. Why is Zeta up 1%, but Microsoft's down 1%? You know, as much as I think Zeta is undervalued, it's like the fact that the market's like, yeah, it'll take Zeta up, but the quality of a company like Microsoft is getting no love. It's just, it's weird. It is very weird how the market is thinking of allocation on this. Ondas still down 6%. It was below 9. That is now back. Politico, Trump said in an interview Tuesday that Iran was running out of crucial arms and that he'd be open to working with some surviving members of the country's ruling regime. Okay, in a roughly 4-minute call with Politico, Trump argued that Tehran's military capacity is being steadily degraded, even as Iranian forces are expected to keep lobbing missiles for a while. Caterpillar, that is down 5% on the day as well. Trump is going to have to claim that we are completely taking out their military to get any level of credibility. Obviously, I'm biased, but I do think the United States has a better shot than not at being able to win against the Iranian military. I guess the question is, how long does it take to actually dismantle the military in its entirety? And then 2, when do people in Iran start actually taking over and not only protesting, but meaningfully having the capacity to take back their government? Like, and if that timeline is 4 weeks, I think it's right to be skeptical of that happening in 4 weeks. Now, if that were to happen in 4 weeks, I think that would be quite incredible. But it feels like there are deeper variables in play. And then here's the other thing that we haven't really talked about enough. Is there a world in which China gets involved and says, we don't like what the United States is doing in Iran, and we are going to start backing the IGRC? And, you know, they start sending money and weapons and this and that. I don't think that happens because I think China's also realized Iran is a headache. But I wonder if Xi wants to send a signal to Trump that says you can't just go into all these countries and do what you want. And, or Russia, for example. You know, if that were to be some level of geopolitical theory that might end up playing out. You know, there is one theory as well that someone sent me yesterday that I thought this was also a relatively interesting theory. It's called the Rhineland theory. I don't know if people have heard about this. Maybe it's a Rimland theory, RIMLAND. But the idea was, as soon as we hit Venezuela and the lack of response from Russia, there was an easy opportunity for the United States to go after Iran because Russia is overcommitted and stuck in Ukraine. They can no longer protect their interests in the world. And this is the opportunity to shrink their influence. This war is about breaking the last and strongest Russian asset in the Middle East, which is Iran. And in the past, Russia was using Iran and their proxies to destabilize the region. But now that Russia is occupied with Ukraine, they can't they can't necessarily help Iran as easily. And then same thing for China, as oil supply gets cut off, China's ability to help them is not the strongest either. That's one theory that is also out there from a geopolitical perspective, that this was the best opportunity if there was ever going to be an opportunity to strike. The other theory is that, Iran was getting close to nukes and that's why we did it. And then the other theory, based on what we heard from Mike Johnson today, is that if we didn't do it, Israel was going to do it. And we kind of had to jump in regardless. Sandus right there, still down 8% today. CrowdStrike down 1.2%. It's Rhineland? Why is there an M then in the freaking... Oh, you're right. It is Rhineland. Why do they have an M, dude? It looks like a Rimland. See, this is not my fault. I'm trying to monitor the situation effectively, and freaking the spelling once again is messing it up. ASTS, are we ripping? ASTS still up 5% on the day. Okay, let's see. Oh, wow. You got the CTO of the Defense Department speaking about Anthropic. This is the guy who publicly called out Dario. Let's see what he has to say right here about Claude.
Southern Spear in Venezuela to now Epic Fury. You've seen sort of us bring together technology and combat power in a way that's been extraordinary. Everything from cyber to undersea, space, all those things combined to let us do these things with very few casualties. One is too many, but very few casualties, very little destruction to our assets, and it's been amazing to watch this military do that.
Yeah, we came into this conflict hours ahead of time with the drama of Anthropic being designated a supply chain risk by the Pentagon and being disentangled from the industry and from the activities in a classified nature within the department. And then also OpenAI being given the green lights to be used in a classified setting. Just last night, we heard from Sam Altman at OpenAI said, you shouldn't have rushed into the deal, that they were trying to escalate the situation, but that it looked opportunistic and sloppy, added a little more nuance around the terms of the deal. Your response?
Yeah, well, so we started, when I got the mandate to be the chief AI officer for the department, essentially, I was looking across where we had deployed AI, and it was very piecemeal in very different parts of the organization. And I wanted to make a big push to make it enterprise-wide. So we restarted talks with all the companies, and we launched Google Gemini on our unclassified networks. And out of 3 million people, over 1.2 million have used it so far in just 2 months. And then we signed a deal with XAI across both unclass and classified levels. But to deploy on those things takes some time. And OpenAI was next, and we are deploying them on classified network.
Is the door closed to Anthropic, or if they were to come back to the negotiating table, you'd be open to it?
I mean, they closed the door. They didn't want to do business with us. We gave them that Friday deadline of...
You think they just want it out of the contract?
I think their culture and their own constitution that has a soul and their own values really are not compatible. I mean, it's sort of strange to want to do business with the Department of War, as they have for 3 years, but not want us to do Department of War stuff. So if that's where we ended up to, and we finally faced that, and they don't want to do business with us, I think that's their choice.
A lot of focus right now with what's happening in the Middle East on missiles and munitions, whether we have enough, whether we're going to run out of stockpiles.
Okay, so there you go. That's the CTO of the DOW basically saying, yeah, they don't want to work with us. Nvidia now feeling it, folks. Losing 177. Nvidia's feeling it. S&P once again still stuck at 670. But even the way that he's talking about Anthropic, this idea that they have their own constitution, their own way of governing, like there's just no way the department's going to be able to meaningfully work with them if their culture is that unique in and of itself and opposed to working with the DOW. So it looks like they moved on. Now, Anthropic has the best tech, and they've kind of even admitted that. But OpenAI seems to be the one that's going to get this contract. Nvidia finally feeling it. I was wondering why Nvidia wasn't feeling it all day. Did a good job holding up. Hopefully can kind of stabilize here, but I mean, if we're going lower, Nvidia's eventually got to go lower with it. Meta's still not too bad. Duolingo once again loses 100. Circle just flipping green. Salesforce down. Visa down. MasterCard down. I meant to say Beirut. I know I said Beirut. I know it's pronounced Beirut. It's when I read fast, dude. My mind is thinking faster than I can speak. And so you end up with Beirut. But that one I actually know. I have some Lebanese friends. Like I know it's Beirut. But you know, this is why when you say you're mispronouncing because of trolling, it's like, no, dude, it's embarrassing. Why would I just want to troll myself by being embarrassed? Like I actually mess up on this shit. C Limited down 23. The Googs are below 300 again. Below 300 again. What are people dying? What are people dying? What are people buying? Dude, this talk of war back and forth. What are people buying? Put in the chat if anyone's buying anything. Say, yeah, the equal weight RSP also ugly. Equal weight can't go to shit. We need the equal weight to stay up. That's the broadening thesis for the market. RSP down 2.5. That's definitely not going to help the S&P. Dude, I love Erwin so much. Rocket Lab. This guy, who will be at the LA meetup, by the way. So for those that didn't get to meet him in New York, he'll be at LA. He will not stop buying this company. And I love it. Conviction, baby. Now, he started buying it at $7, which helps. But he continues to buy the dip. I'm buying groceries today. That's a good idea. Important to have groceries. SoFi, IONQ, Nebius. Nebius still getting wrecked today, right? Nebius, wow, 7%, touched 83. I see Nvidias, I see ASTSs, I see AMDs. Broadcom, I hope Broadcom puts up a good earnings. I think it's next week because this thing could see 250 pretty quickly if it doesn't. Broadcom should be next week, yeah. Oracle is the 17th, which is also going to be important. Buying South Korea dip. Did we recover at all in South Korea? EWY? Nope. I mean, a very small bounce off 125, but still down 14% on the day, dude. Ugly. Wow, Trump's having a freaking live stream in 20 minutes with the German chancellor in the White House. Okay, I would imagine they're going to talk about what's going on. By the way, the UK president came out, the prime minister, he came out yesterday and he said, he basically said, this war shit is not on us. This is the United States. We are not involved in this. He kind of completely backed out and was like, we don't want anything to do with this. Germany and France have been a bit more, I guess you could say, nicer to the United States in terms of like accepting what they've done. S&P 672. But I guess the German chancellor, for all my Germans in the chat, what do you guys think about this Merz guy? Right? That's the chancellor, Merz. Friedrich Merz. I have zero opinion on this guy. I don't know anything about him. He has the same name as one of my favorite philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche. But outside of that, like, is he a liberal or is he a conservative? That's how much I don't know. I don't even know what party he's on. I know Starmer is more liberal. He's a former BlackRock dude. Dude, they are all former private equities, all these guys. Even the Carney, right? He's former Brookfield. Like, these guys all make a ton of money, and they're like, all right, now I need the power. I made the money. Now I need the power. We need to get into politics. You guys are saying center left. Some of you guys are saying conservative. How is he center left if he's conservative? See, this is the thing about politics. This is why it divides people. People just have vastly different interpretations on this stuff. Okay, so Trump's going to be live in 20 minutes. So I guess we'll see what he says there and if anything changes. You did have Jamie Dimon yesterday as well. That was at a conference. And he also said a bunch of different things around kind of where the world is going and where the market is going. This is what about Iran and kind of how we should think about inflation in general.
Cities, that's the most important thing. The second thing is the hope that this might lead to a long, just peace in the Middle East. I think the odds of that are higher. Tom Friedman wrote a great op-ed today. While there's risk associated with this, it's very hard to predict the ultimate outcomes. Maybe it will be a catalyst to get that done. And obviously, the sooner, the better. So, and you see what's doing in the markets, not dramatic, economic, the economy is not often driven by something like that unless it's prolonged.
What about inflation? As people kind of think about the potential ripple effects of higher oil prices, for example, obviously today's move is just one day. Do you see a risk that this could lead to sustained inflation over the long run?
I don't think this thing in an isolated way will. I think there's some risk there's more inflation than people think, and that could be like a skunk in a party if that ever happens. Hopefully it doesn't happen, and no one actually knows. But this right now will increase gas prices a little bit. And again, if it's not prolonged, there's not going to be a major inflationary hit. Again, if it went on for a long time, that would be different.
Another concern that I've seen mentioned out there is the risk of retaliatory cyber.
We got another update, folks. Israel orders troops to advance in Lebanon. That came out 5 minutes ago. Netanyahu and Defense Minister Katz of Israel directed the IDF to seize strategic positions in Lebanon and protect border communities. Israeli forces have moved hundreds of meters into southern Lebanon, targeting Hezbollah, while Lebanese troops redeployed further north. All right, boots on the ground. They are officially coming into place right here. This was about 7 minutes ago. This update came out. Bloomberg, Israel orders troops to advance in Lebanon.
Attacks, banks being a potential target there. How concerned are you about that? I know that's something that you mentioned in your letter about a year ago.
I think the most important thing is that we keep the Western world free and safe for democracy. And people like this have gotten away literally with murder for 50 years. So that's far more important. But as a corollary to that, you got to expect there'll be cyber attacks or terrorist attacks either here around the world. Banks may be targets, so may plenty of other people, and we always try to be prepared for that. We never try to predict when, why, where. We spend a lot of money protecting ourselves for cyber. We think it's part of our job. But I've always said I would consider that one of the highest risk banks bear, not just the cycle, cyber.
Yes, I remember that from your letter last year. And of course, we are here at the Leveraged Finance Conference. It's the 31st annual event. So let's dig into your view on credit. Broadly, last week you said at JP Morgan's investor update that the environment reminds you of 05, 06, 07, that people are leveraging to the hill, and you see some dumb things out there happening. Where specifically are those dumb things happening?
Let me give you a better perspective. Individuals in very good shape, debt to service ratios, corporations in good shape. Government is not. Governments around the world, the United States government, have far more debt than they've ever had before. We're going to have a cycle one day. I think when we have the cycle, and it may be driven by geopolitics, it may not. Those geopolitical things are kind of longer tail items, and there are a lot of short-term good items. I think the one big beautiful bill will help drive growth. I think deregulation of banks and other companies can help drive kind of growth. Still at that party may be inflation. So credit will have a normal cycle. I believe that it'll be worse than a normal one when it happens. So there will be one, and that's because of complacency. Asset prices are very high, credit spreads are very low. I don't think a lot of people have seen a credit cycle.
He's right. I mean, definitely it's been at least a decade since we've meaningfully seen a credit cycle. We've had a couple scares over the past 10 years, but not in any meaningful way since realistically 2008. So I think Jamie Dimon's right to be cautious right there, but it is interesting that he's not thinking this is going to lead to massive levels of inflation, which means that he's also assuming this is not going to last for a long time. SPY getting a bounce, folks. You're getting a bounce. 674.50. Nvidia almost 180. I do not see a headline for this, Nothing that I can see. There's no Trump tweet. But the market likes something. It could also purely just be, the same reason the market was down, as aggressive as it was today. Same reason it's up. It's kind of the whims of the market going up or down. And once again, the chop is the chop. The chop is the chop. I mean, staying within a range is exactly what this market has done, which is why it's kind of encouraging we're not dropping below levels of the range, either up or down. Obviously, it would be nice to be on the upper side of it, but at least if we're not on the lower side of it and we're stuck in the middle, at least keeps things kind of stable. S&P 674, those green candles aren't stopping. Nvidia, can she break 180 is the question. Yeah, it's Jane Street. That's always got to be the answer. SoFi going green on the day. 1840. What about hoodie? Almost green. Well, not almost green, but definitely up from the low. 72 to 75. Where's Palantir? We at 142. We are at 142.11. AMD up from 188 to 190. SanDisk, that one getting some love. 557 to 580. VG lost a lot of the pump, but still up 7%. Rocket Lab almost 70. I mean, again, every day it's up and down within a range, but at least we're not going that much lower. We're so back. Dude, we have said we're so back every day after an ugly flush out. Once we get the reversal, even if it's not a full reversal, we're like, yep, we're back. And then we end up being back for like 2 or 3 days. Like, we're like, yep, see, this is why you buy the dip. You can't be scared. Scared money don't make money. This is why you buy the dip. And then boom. The dip keeps dipping. And it's like, oh. But then we go green. It's like, we're back. We're back. It's just been the narrative for the past 2 months. Even South Korea, 125 to 131. Itty bitty bounce right there. Maybe that actually gets below 10% on the day. Yeah, every week since October, there's been the argument about we are so back. I think Noto's going to buy more shares of SoFi. I mean, if we see another SEC Form 4 with Noto buying even more stock, I mean, that would be incredible to see. But he did buy $1 million worth of it yesterday. I mean, it is a pretty big purchase on the open market. And a lot of CEOs haven't really bought back their stock, right? You got Bill McDermott, you got the Mercado Libre guy, you got the Nike executives. And then you have SoFi. You don't have that many executives engaging in insider buys. So it is still nice to see it. But again, they're not buying because they think it's overvalued. Ondas right there, still down 5. U.S. Embassy in Beirut says it will be closed until further notice due to ongoing regional tensions. Okay, so more embassies across the world starting to close. Why are you following the South Korea ETF? A, because it's up 50% this year. B, because 2 of the biggest memory stocks in the world, SK Hynix and Samsung, are 50% of the ETF. I don't know if people saw the Morgan Stanley report on Samsung, but if they're accurate, Samsung will do more operating profit next year than Google. They will do over $100 billion of operating profit. Yeah, the stock is cheap because it's not being priced like Google. But if you think next year is the year that memory peaks and, the cycle kind of slows down, which is what I think a lot of the reason the memory stocks aren't, even higher than they are today is because once again, people are like, all right, cool, you're going to have one good year. And then once again, it'll fall back down. That's why the stocks continue to be cheap. But can you imagine them Samsung doing more profit than Google? That's how much the demand for memory is intensifying. And it's only going to get worse if you look at the bull case around smartphones, laptops, AI PCs, etc. Which is why I think Nvidia acquired Grok. Again, it allows them to have a one-up on memory architecture in regards to SRAM. And 2, it's like, part of the rumors over the past couple of months have been OpenAI has been unhappy with Nvidia's chips because the inference is not fast enough. And part of that has to do with memory capacity on the chips not being up to speed, which is what I think Vera Rubin is ultimately attempting to resolve. So, that would be bullish for Nvidia, but if these memory names keep going, then they might have some more momentum. Netflix right there, 96.54, PayPal 45.80. Fed Williams says oil prices do influence inflation, and that impact would change near-term inflation outlook. We will have to assess persistence. Okay, so basically they are going to continue to monitor the situation. Starmer says the UK is sending helicopters with counter-drone capabilities to Cyprus. Okay, so is the UK getting involved, or are they? Because yesterday, the dude was acting like he is not trying to get involved in this. I mean, we had the crazy headline from Spain yesterday. Spain was like, hey, if you have a military base in the US, or if the US fires from our military base, we will not allow them to essentially continue to be on our military base, which is why then US fighter jets had to leave the military base on Spain and go to Germany and France instead. So Spain completely wants to be out. The UK kind of goes in and out, but also another headline right here, again, as we're analyzing this, important to see a lot of perspectives. The Iranian women's national football team refused to sing the Islamic regime's anthem yesterday for the Asian Cup opening match. So, once again, a lot of people see a lot of these videos of Iranians talking. They think it's all Western propaganda. I think there's a claim that a lot of it can be propaganda, but there's also counterclaims like the Iranian football team saying we are not going to sing our national anthem to show our protests against the regime, which to me signals, hey, they're more happy than not that the regime has collapsed. It doesn't answer the fundamental question, though, of what replaces that regime. I have holidays in Spain coming up, so Spain better stay out of this. Dude, we are all so selfish. We are all so freaking selfish. As long as my vacation is good, then I'll be all right. Do you know how many countries have their citizens unhappy? Are we fixing them all? No, we can't fix them all. We're probably not going to fix them all. And once again, I agree that just because the citizens of a country are unhappy, that doesn't give us justification to invade and kill their leaders. Having said that, I'm also looking at the people of the country that we did it to and how happy they are. And so I don't have a defined view on this war, if you haven't figured out by now. There is no side I'm taking that is good, bad, evil, this. First of all, I'm not interested in having a super dogmatic ideological perspective on the war because I think war is too nuanced to have a dogmatic viewpoint. Second of all, I don't think you can. I think you can if you want to, but you have to compress multiple perspectives to try to come up with some level of a nuanced opinion. Now, in the stock market, I try to take more perspectives, right? Because that's what we analyze every day. But when it comes to politics, I think it's okay to admit, whatever perspective you have probably is not easily resolved being black or white. S&P 675 up from 669, which is also nice to see. We're at the high of the past 2 hours. Is Trump live yet? He should be live right now. He's probably not. Nope, not live yet. It says in about 5 minutes he will be live. That's probably going to be another 10 minutes, but let's see if he ends up going live. Fed Williams, Iran conflict is the type of development that could hit both sides of the mandate, but key is how much it influences each side. I'm not going to Mexico until further notice. Yeah, I mean, that's now not all parts of Mexico are getting hit by the cartels, but the parts that have been hit are, not the prettiest to see. Nvidia right there, 179.65. Yeah, Circle's had a great week. Stable coins have done very well. 99.30. That's up another 3%. I had puts on Circle when it was at freaking 150. I sold them way too quick, way too quick. This thing was going way lower. But Circle right there, 99.30. It's up 3.4%. MongoDB is getting a little move from 229. Now up to 254, still down 20% on the day. Okay, let's see if we can get some other macro updates right here. Bitcoin still pumping, 68.3. Where's Pinterest, dude? Pinterest tried to pump 2 weeks ago. It's up 7% right here. The thing about the Elliott $1 billion management stake is that they're gonna just buy back their shares. Like Pinterest already said this morning, we're gonna use the $1 billion to buy back our stock. So they're gonna have to be pretty strategic with making sure that $1 billion actually gets put to use. If not, then I don't know if the market's gonna be that happy of them just buying their stock. We got the Apollo CEO. Let's see what he said here about private credit and AI. We just heard from the Blackstone CEO about 10 minutes ago as well.
There you're still fairly, you're less cautious.
So I'd say I'm going to give you a more specific answer because it requires a more specific answer. In our private equity portfolio, which is not the subject of this, we have zero software.
Interesting.
In our credit book, across the totality of the firm, it's a fraction.
Look at his first sentence is, we're not exposed to software. I mean, it makes sense. He's trying to get everyone to realize, hey, this whole SaaS thing is not going to affect us. But you can tell even the private credit guys are trying to make sure that everyone knows they are not that exposed to the sector that is going through the biggest re-rating we've seen in about 10 years.
Which is not the subject of this. We have zero software.
Interesting.
In our credit book, across the totality of the firm, it's a fraction of assets. We run a broadly diversified credit book that is not concentrated in software. The problem with software is that it was 30% of the levered buyout market. Therefore, it was 30% of the levered lending market. And therefore, it is just overrepresented and subject to attack. But we should not deny that change is coming. And change is not coming just in data centers and AI. As a world, we are building infrastructure. We're building energy. We're doing energy transmission. We're building next-gen manufacturing. We're ramping defense. And we're doing this thing called AI and data. We're essentially spending every dollar since the creation of FIRE, and we're doing it all at once.
Yes.
And whatever we're doing in the US, they want to do in Europe, and they're not as well prepared to it, and they're doing it in the Middle East, and they're doing it elsewhere around the world. We will see the largest need for capital ever. And that's what we've seen so far this year. And so now to your specific question, it's about underwriting. There are a number of very strong US tech companies who run diversified businesses, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, who are interested in seeing these centers built and are interested in not consolidating the debt on their balance sheet.
I mean, once again, no software and AI data center spend is good. That is the number 1 and 2 priority of these private credit CEOs to try to justify to the street that software won't affect them and that them helping Google and Meta finance data centers is not a bad thing. And I think that's what Apollo is trying to do right there. S&P 675.30. IMF Deputy Managing Director says the global economy was expected to grow at a healthy pace prior to the war in Iran. He also says Iran war has potential to be very impactful across a range of global metrics, including inflation and growth. So you got the IMF coming out basically signaling that this is going to change their growth projections. Target CEO's live. Let's see what he's saying as well.
In the stores, because we know we have to equip our teams to have the resources they need to deliver an incredible store experience.
You're going to be hiring more or paying more?
Both.
Both, right now.
Investing more in payroll. The investments we've made in our team over time, I think, have been incredibly important.
That was news because what Target has announced is about $1 billion more in CapEx to improve stores and get new merchandise. And now he's talking about OpEx as well, boosting hiring and pay. I also asked him what gives him confidence in the growth forecast and where they've already made changes in the business. Here's what he said.
Two things: the confidence in the incredible team we have at Target and the confidence in the early places where we're seeing returns where we've made change. And
Which is like what?
So things like that change in beauty, things like food. And when I talk about style and design and differentiation, the categories that might spring to mind first are apparel or home. But that differentiation is just as important in a category like food, where we've got incredible own brands. Good and Gather is almost a $4 billion own brand for us. And we know we're a destination with national brand partners to bring the newness that our guests love. We just reset a big portion of our food assortment, brought about 30% newness and wellness, and the early response there has been positive. And so we're out of the gates strong this year. We've seen growth in February already. And I'll be the first to say 1 month does not make a trend, but it gives us confidence that the change we're making is on the right path.
Target's been stuck at that 80-90 range for the past year. So this breakout has been, it's not really a breakout yet, but at least this momentum has been something people have been waiting for. S&P getting a little bit more momentum. Target up almost 5% today. It has meaningfully lagged Walmart and its competitors. I think 2 quarters ago, the biggest issue they had was not only the tariffs, but the foot traffic. And based on their guidance, it looks like that has changed, which is getting the market to kind of turn this around. If we can see 677 S&P, that would be nice. 669 to 675 is definitely a bounce that shouldn't go unnoticed. Bitcoin as well from 66 to 68. 680 would be amazing to recapture today. I doubt we're going to do that, but if we get close, would not be bad. 676, there you go. 1120 looks like money coming back into the system. Why do you think there's a sudden move on the S&P? I really don't have a headline. I mean, why was there a 2% drawdown on the S&P? Yeah, you could point to the Iranian strikes and stuff, but it's not like the strikes were reversed. In fact, the strikes got worse based on some of these embassies that have now got struck and literally since the market opened. So I think I think the market's trying to figure out, okay, how long is this going to last? How do we price this in? And with the corresponding variables every day that are conflicting back and forth, like there's no way you could easily trust the bounce by any sense of the imagination, but you also shouldn't trust like some massive drawdown sticking because, you know, the conflict might end quicker than what people think. Now, this Fed talk about oil prices increasing inflation is not helping, but we're already priced to not get a rate cut, so hopefully that would be okay. Davis says, Amit, do you ever even have an answer? Look, last year it was easy, bro. My job was so easy. Amit, why is the market down? Guys, Trump's trying to tariff the world. What do you expect? Zimbabwe, 95% tariffs? Of course the market's going to go down. Amit, why is the market recovering? Guys, he said he's not going to tariff Zimbabwe 95% anymore. Of course the market's going to recover. Now, Amit, why is the market down? Well, you know, the consortium of analysis that I'm trying to come up with creates a conflicting paradigmatic view of the existential reality that creates a fundamental disentanglement with how we should understand the perception versus the reality of the market in an inadequate way to try to get to a reasonable foundational understanding for why the stock market is going down. That's the difference between 2025 and 2026. I mean, every time I try to answer that question in 2026, that's basically what it sounds like. 2025 was easy, though. 2025. Davis says, I'm sorry, I commented. Davis, I hate you, bro. Sounds like carp. It does sound like carp, but carp usually has a bit more substance when he says this stuff. The market's going up now because the emotional market men came to their senses. You know, I really do think that take is a legit take. If the market was ran by women, we wouldn't have this stupid up and down every day. The women would just buy the stocks and not look at it. They wouldn't care about what the Apollo CEO is saying about private credit. They're just like, oh, in 10 years, it'll be okay. And to be honest, they're probably right. But men in our stupid little algorithms completely manipulate the market. Completely. You're a simp? Okay, that is I'm definitely simping where I'm saying some simp ass shit, but still. 676.50, bro. Are we hitting 677? Are we? Because that would be nice. Wait till you get married a bit. Yeah. I don't even.
It's going to be rough. Although I wonder if my future wife cares about the stock market, because if she doesn't, I feel like it's gonna be super easy. Like so many of you have said so many times, you just don't tell your partners about your portfolios because like they don't care. It's like cool. As soon as they start caring, it's like, babe, why are we down 5% today? I don't know, bro. I don't know. It's nothing easy to explain. There's nothing easy. Is Tesla bouncing? Tesla 393. 393. You worry about the stocks and the yard. Oh my gosh. My wife tells me I'm not risking enough. See, that's a good wife. That's a good wife. She's South Korean. That'll explain a lot. By the way, there's a 3x leverage South Korea ETF, KROU. That's down 32% today. So if anyone wanted to 3x the leverage on South Korea, there you go. SoFi 1840. Trump is still not live right now. 1863. My wife told me to exercise 0 DTE call options. Bitcoin 68. Dude, Bitcoin's actually making a move right here. Like a legit move. And if that is followed with the NASDAQ coming in, that would be nice. NASDAQ only down 1.6. It was down 2.3. Lulu is down 3.4. Why are you calling your life bro? Dude, I call everybody bro. I've been doing that for a long time. Dude, bro. I mean, that's how I'm probably going to talk to my wife. I'm calling her bro. It is what it is. That's just how I talk. She's going to have to be a bro. Nebius, that's down 5. Google down 2. GameStop down 3. Silver down 7.5. Silver not getting, I mean, it's a small bounce, but that one's still getting hit pretty bad. All right, the stream is up for Trump. He's not live yet. It should be very soon. Let me see if another stream has it. But it should be soon now. Yeah, not yet. We should get it soon. Bitcoin almost 69. Steve won't care what you call him. Mid friend zoning his own wife by calling her bro. That's how you got to do it, bro. That's how you got to do it. You got to keep them on their toes. You got to make sure they always know. 179.50 on Nvidia. Okay, while we wait for Trump, we do have some of these clips that are going viral from the Epstein case. Some of these clips are a bit crazy in regards to Bill Clinton's deposition. And 2 of them I thought were just kind of wild. So, okay, this is the first one that is crazy. So they start giving him some pictures of him and the girls in the Epstein files. And the way he's looking at it is like he's reminiscing on good times. So take a look at this. The lawyer's getting upset. He starts smiling. He takes the picture back from the lawyer because he wants to see it again. Licks his finger. And he's smiling. It's almost like he's like, oh, those were good times. Look at his lawyer. His lawyer's just like, please, can we take this away?
We have about 5 minutes remaining in the majority's first hour.
I mean, look at this dude. Let me rewind. Look at his lawyer. His lawyer's like, yeah, we gotta take this away because you're smiling on camera right now. And he's still laughing. Like, that was crazy. Absolutely crazy. And then this one, I think, was even worse when they asked him about the flight attendants and what he said about that. His response wasn't that encouraging here.
What did happen, Mr. President?
I don't know. I mean, I've already told you this. I'll tell it again. I never saw anybody do anything wrong. I thought they were flight attendants.
Do flight attendants typically wear tank tops and jeans?
They don't all wear uniforms on private planes.
Yes, sir. Most are dressed probably.
Bro, and then he smiles after that. Like, it was just, they don't all wear uniforms on private planes. It was, I don't know. It wasn't the best look, bro. It was not the best look. So, yeah, that's what you had from Clinton. You're getting a lot more of these clips that are starting to go viral here. Hillary Clinton crashed out. She thought someone was recording her and like posting images of her without her consent in the deposition. And so she almost walked out. She was like, this is bullshit. She like started cursing, all that stuff. So she was a bit annoyed at that as well. S&P cannot break through 677. Unfortunately, wow. They teased us 670, 650, right back to 674. Absolutely teased right there. Complete reversal from the high. Look at that red candle. Just wrecked any momentum that we had. Even Bitcoin, dude, 68.9 to 68.4. $540 candle right back to the downside. This is why you just cannot get excited up or down, because it stays stuck within a range. Especially intraday. Intraday trend is like non-existent in 2026. Maybe you can get a weekly trend, unless you're day trading, obviously. But even then, when you're day trading, like there's like it's hard to find the trend. You can somewhat find it on the weekly, but then every week when we reverse, the trend disappears. Yeah, give it another 15 minutes and then it'll rebound. It's weird, dude. It is very weird, but that's what we're dealing with. At least SoFi getting a little bit of love right here, 1869. That's up 1.6%. Article from Bloomberg: Russia is poised to reap the benefits of soaring oil prices and a possible return of Indian buyers for its crude after hostilities in the Middle East. I forgot that Trump basically tried to negotiate with the Indians to not buy Russian oil. I mean, what choice do they have? If they can't get it from Iran, they're going to go to Russia. In the latest data, Russia's seaborne export volumes averaged 3.4 million barrels a day in the 4 weeks to March 1st. They edged lower from the period to February 22nd, falling for the first time in 6 weeks, and remain about 465,000 barrels a day below their pre-Christmas peak, which obviously could go much higher if Iranian oil is banned. At least for Russia. Yeah, I forgot. I mean, India, they need a lot of oil. And Modi really did promise Trump that they would start to like really take down the amount of oil they're buying from Russia to help with the Ukraine war. But I mean, he's going to have no choice if the Strait of Hormuz continues to be closed off to India. Wow, Axios. UAE considers striking Iranian missile sites as regional war spreads. Goodness gracious. And you can't even blame the UAE. You really can't, given the shit that they're dealing with. The Saudis as well. I mean, it's only a matter of time before MBS gets ready to strike back. He's had 2 refineries that are responsible for 1.5 million barrels of oil a day get struck within the past 72 hours. I don't think he's happy about any of this. S&P, wow, right back to 676. This is crazy. What a roller coaster. 676.50 down to 674, right back to 676. I mean, if you went short literally less than 5 minutes ago because the trend broke, I mean, maybe that short works out, but then you just got hit with a pretty heavy green candle on the S&P, $2 right after deciding to go the opposite direction. This is an incredible market, dude. Absolutely incredible. Julian says, I'm in Dubai. Missile strikes right now. Just shot down next to the Burj Khalifa. Crazy. We thought he had stopped. Yeah, you know, the Burj Khalifa stuff is very interesting because there's a lot of AI slop on the internet of people sharing videos of the Burj Khalifa like getting struck, and that's just not true. Like freaking Grant Cardone, dude. This guy has a literal AI 10x course that he sells for like $1,000, and he's sharing this shit. And I'm not saying I'm not susceptible to some of the AI slop, but like If the Burj Khalifa was on fire like this, I feel like it would make more headline news. Nonetheless, there still are strikes going on in Dubai. Yeah, I'm getting the Bloomberg headline right now. Dubai residents report hearing sounds of blasts. And Julian, that might be some of those missiles getting struck down right now. I bet the prince is on the phone with Trump right now thinking, where do we hit them at? Washington Post did report that MBS and Trump have been calling for the past 4 weeks. And MBS was a proponent of advocating for the strikes against Iran. Israel doesn't like Iran, but neither does Saudi Arabia. And, if this thing continues to spread, then you have a full-on regional conflict. Tesla right there, still down 2.8%. Reuters witnesses report loud bang heard in Dubai. Loud bang heard in Dubai. Nothing has hit the Burj, but drones and missiles have gone extremely close and then shot down. But the fact that they're getting that close is scary. Julian, do you see people trying to leave Dubai? Like, do you hear more people trying to just get out, or are people just hoping that it ends soon? I mean, Dubai is home to a lot of foreigners, definitely a lot of travelers. I think it's impossible to even think you could travel in the Middle East this year. Like, I don't think it makes any sense to even think of going there for vacation now. Google right there, still down 2%. Flights are all off. Didn't the airport that got hit, that was in the UAE, right? If I'm not wrong. Yeah, that was the UAE. That was on Saturday night. Reuters right now, UAE Airlines to resume limited number of flights. Oh, that's fair. Even if you wanted to leave. Yeah, I forgot if the UAE airport's getting hit. It's not that easy. Julian says everyone is escaping through Oman and trying to take flights out of there, but for the majority, most people are stuck. All airports look to be closed for weeks, I'd say. I mean, dude, Oman got hit by the Iranian drones yesterday. Oman was advocating, they were trying to broker the deal in Geneva with Witkoff to have some resemblance of diplomacy. The Omanian foreign minister went on all the news networks and said, the Iranians are ready to diplomatically talk. And less than 24 hours later, boom, you have the strikes. So the fact that the Iranians then put drones on Oman and Oman was trying to advocate for them just shows how regional this conflict is becoming, just by proxy of different countries with different incentives. Where is Trump? He's still not live yet. We have the stream, but he's not there with the German chancellor. 75.35 on hood. S&P, are we at least holding 675? Just holding 675.70 here. Yeah, the Kuwait airport also got hit with a drone. That was correct. And the Dubai airport. And then Qatar came out yesterday, and they put out an official media statement because they shot down, I think we covered this in the morning, they shot down 7 Iranian fighter jets. I'll try to get their exact statement, but they also said that, we are now making sure we can protect our own safety in the midst of this ongoing conflict. That's how you say it. It's Qatar. It's not Qatar. I used to say Qatar, but then I learned it's Qatar. Okay. So I'm not absolutely horrible on this. Let's get a little more coverage as well, and then we'll see when Trump goes live.
Injured. But all of this is kind of fueling speculation that Iran is now trying to crack down on anyone or any militant groups that they think might be involved at some point potentially in trying to help the U.S. and Israel on the ground to dismantle the Iranian regime. Now, for the Iraqi Kurdish leadership here, Wolf, this is a very tense situation, very sensitive. They have crucial relationships with Iran and with Turkey. So they really don't want to get involved. They don't want to be seen as being anything other than neutral in this conflict. When that reporting came out yesterday from Barak Ravid at Axios that President Trump had actually spoken to the two most prominent Iraqi Kurdish leaders here, there was basically 24 hours of silence from the Iraqi Kurdish leadership. We have now had a statement from one of those leaders basically trying to kind of downplay things, saying that at a certain point in the conversation, President Trump articulated what the strategic objectives were of this war, but very clearly here, the leadership feeling that they are in a very difficult, tense, and sensitive position, and they don't want to invoke the ire of Iran and those Iran-backed militias in Iraq and come under even more attacks. Wolf.
Clarissa Ward, one of our courageous journalists on the ground for us.
Once again, this is all a game of who strikes first and who folds first. And right now, what are we, 72 hours into the game? I mean, no one is willing to step down or posture as if they're not going to stop. Definitely not the United States and definitely not Israel. Nvidia getting the bounce back up to 179 with the S&P. The S&P is still down 1.5%. It's pronounced quarter. That's hilarious. That's actually hilarious. All right, now we got to wait to see what Trump says. Now we got to wait to see what Mr. Trump says. This is crazy, bro. We were talking about this thing for so long, and now it's happening. Like literally every day we talked about this. I don't know if any of us actually thought it would happen, but it freaking happened. And now we're here. And the market has to adjust to it as well. A couple of non-war headlines right now. Cursor, some of you guys probably have used this company before if you are a software engineer. They have doubled their revenue to $2 billion. The reason this is important, even if you don't have exposure to it in the private markets, which if you own Nvidia, you do have some exposure because I think they invested in them. We really need to see the private companies continue to grow fast to justify the AI valuations. And so Cursor's worth $30 billion, doing $2 billion in revenue, 15 times sales, not necessarily cheap. Having said that, they doubled in 3 months. They doubled in 3 months. They were doing $1 billion by the end of 2025. They're now doing $2 billion. So it is important to, I think, keep an update on all these private companies and the best AI ones. You want to see them grow, right? Because if they're not growing, then the public companies are probably going to have a hard time growing as well. So it does seem like these AI startups continue to gain momentum. And Cursor is an AI coding company. A lot of people said Codex and Claude Code would wipe them off business, and they've done really well. They continue to penetrate the enterprise. So looks like there's room for a lot of these companies in the AI coding ecosystem. What it tells me is a lot of people are learning how to code without having to code, which is just a whole new paradigm for computer programming as well. Semaphore saying the Senate strikes a deal on Trump's housing idea. Republicans like John Kennedy, who previously raised concerns about distorting the market, said they needed more time to review the legislation. The White House threw its weight Monday behind a new proposal from Senate Banking Chair Tim Scott and Elizabeth Warren that combines their housing package with some elements of the House's, plus language that would fine certain firms that own 350 or more single-family homes if they buy 2 years after enactment. Okay, so S&P also, she's making a move right here, trying to go for 677, but it looks like Trump's idea of not letting BlackRock buy a ton of homes, it might be closer to becoming a reality if this bill can get passed. S&P 676, CoreWeave just getting wrecked right here. 72 down 7%. Nebius down 4%. C Limited again. The earnings were good. I don't know why the stock's down 24. I'll have to go deeper in the numbers, but they beat on the top and the bottom, and they beat by a wide margin. Reading from the CEO, 2025 has been a great year. We generated a record $23 billion in revenue. We're up 36% year-over-year, acceleration from 2024. We improved our bottom line profits. All of our businesses scaled well in 2025, exceeding our initial growth expectations. Yeah, I don't know what the market wants. Like, I mean, C has just been decimated. This thing was at 150. Now it's at 80. I don't know what the market needs from them to get some momentum. Software, though, catching a bid. IGV just went green. We are in the middle of the chop. S&P, wow. Okay, there's your actual green coming in. That was a good almost 85 cents candle, almost $1 right there. 677 about to be 678. Nvidia's got to be 180 or close to it. Nvidia 180.3. There it is. Once again, playing with our emotions, making us think everything's going to be okay. The Qs only down 1.2. Nvidia almost 180.57. Nebius getting a candle. SoFi almost 19. S&P, look at that. It's busting through 678. Oil is actually going down. Went from up 8.5 to up 7.2. That's about a 1.3% decline right there, which is probably helping. The VIX has got to be taking a haircut. VIX is at 24. It was at 28. So we were up 27% on the day on the VIX. Now we're only up 12%. Oh, no, we were actually up 30. At 10:30 exactly, we were up 31.3% when the VIX hit 28.15. So we did have the VIX 30 at exactly 10:30. An hour later, it's now down 20%. Meta goes green. Microsoft goes greeny green. It's because of this headline, U.S. considering oil tanker insurance support to ease Middle East cruise shipments. Okay, that's definitely not a bad thing. I don't know if that necessarily stops the overall issue with oil prices, but you can imagine markets feel some level of relief on that. Yeah, U.S. considering oil tanker insurance support to ease Middle East cruise shipments. Trump's still not live yet. Trump still not live. Deficit's going up. Dude, this deficit, we are going to be in a deficit, I think, till the end of time. Like at what point does the United States ever close the deficit? Or the debt. When do we pay back the debt? We talked about that analysis last week. By 2050, we're going to be at 60 trillion of debt. I mean, unless we have the most incredible AI growth that the world has ever seen, how the hell are we ever going to pay this back, dude? 38 trillion. Now, again, maybe the debt doesn't matter because money is relative. And, you know, if the perception of money backed by the military means that we can continue borrowing more than we spend forever, then it's just a number at that point. But it's kind of crazy, dude. Like we are in so much debt and such a large deficit. And I don't think anything changes it. Trump is live. I don't see him live. Hold on. He's not live on the White House stream. Let me check the other stream. Okay, he just went live. All right, let's pull it up. Here he is.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. We have a meeting with a man who's become a friend of mine, and we've known each other for a little while and some very interesting times. And we get along. Our countries get along very well. We have a great affinity for each other. And the chancellor has been very well received in Germany. He's a very, very successful man, became the chancellor of Germany, which is a big deal. And he's doing a very good job. In my opinion, a great job, very popular. And the relationship that we have in trade and everything else has been very strong. We've been able to do our deals, and it's been very strong. We'll obviously be talking a little bit about Iran today, and he's been helping us out. We've been very nice, actually. And that is coming along as you see very well. They have no Navy, it's been knocked out. They have no Air Force, it's been knocked out. They have no air detection, that's been knocked out. Their radar has been knocked out. And just about everything's been knocked out. So we'll see how we do, but we're doing very well. We have a great military, and they're doing a fantastic job. So we'll be talking about that. And we're talking about some very big trade deals, and those I know will work out too. So I just want to say it's a great honor to have you at the Oval Office. The beautiful Oval Office, beautiful White House. It's a special place, even from your standpoint. And you have some very special places too. And I look forward to being with you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for having me here in this Oval Office for the third time now.
Yeah.
Really happy to have the opportunity to speak with you in these challenging times. We are on the same page in terms of getting this terrible regime in Ukraine. There are too many bad guys in this world, actually, and this is an issue we have to talk about because we all want to see this war coming to an end as soon as possible. But Ukraine has to preserve its territory and their security interests, and well, we will talk about that.
We will.
Looking
indeed.
forward to that.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you
That's some
for your
interesting.
hospitality. Thank you for letting me spending the night in your guest house.
That's
It's a
right.
very, very
good,
comfortable
Hope
place.
you liked it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, great place.
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people, people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready. And we've had a very, very powerful impact because virtually everything they have has been knocked out now. Their missile count is going way down. Amazingly, they're hitting countries that were, let's call them neutral, right? They lived together for a long time. I think they were surprised. I was surprised. I think and now those countries are all fighting against them and fighting strongly against them. Someday they'll write a story and they'll say why they did that, but they hit countries that had nothing to do with what's going on. They were sort of leaving everything alone. All of a sudden they had missiles shot in, which shows you the level of evil that we're dealing with. They'll hit people that were actually at least somewhat friendly, and they had no problems with it. Also hitting only civilian places, hotels and apartment buildings, and we're hitting them where it is much more appropriate. We're hitting them very hard. And the big scale hitting goes now. They no longer have air protection. They no longer have any detection facilities at all left. And so they're gonna be in for a lot of hurt. These are bad people. These are people that killed. I guess it's 35,000. It's coming out 35,000 over the last 3 weeks. Protesters, 35,000 violently killed. So these are bad people. And the leader of the pack is gone. And as you know, 49 people were taken out in the first hit. And I guess there was another hit today on the new leadership. And it looks like that was pretty substantial also. So they're getting hit very hard, and we'll see what happens. A lot of people are coming forward. A lot of the people you would least suspect want to quit. They want to have immunity. They're asking for immunity, and probably at some point they'll be dropping, as you would say, laying down their guns. We'll see what happens. In the meantime, we're just continuing to go forward. Our military is the #1 in the world by far, and we are. Everything's big in my book. Venezuela was big. This is big. The original hit, Midnight Hammer, was big. Everything you view is big, but it's not considered very big by some standards, by some of our standards. We have a military like no other military that's ever been built.
So we've got the
Yeah, please.
Mr. President, what's the worst case scenario that you have planned for in Iran?
Well, I don't know if there's a worst case. We have them very much beaten militarily from the military standpoint. They're still lobbing some missiles. At some point, they won't even be able to do that because we're hitting all of their carriers. We're hitting all of their missile stock. You know, they built up all these missiles over the last few years. They had a lot of them. They've shot a lot of them, and we're knocking out a lot. I guess the worst case would be we do this, and then somebody takes over who's as bad as the previous person, right? That could happen. We don't want that to happen. That would probably be the worst. You go through this, and then in 5 years, you realize you put somebody in who is no better. So we'd like to see somebody in there that's going to bring it back for the people. And we'll see what happens with the people. You know, they have their chance. And we've said, don't do it yet. If you're going to go out and protest, don't do it yet. It's very dangerous out there. A lot of bombs are being dropped. But I would say that would be about the worst.
Do you have someone in mind right now? Because you said all the people you did have in mind have been taken out. What do you think?
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, you know, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group. They may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody. But we have, I mean, Venezuela was so incredible because we did the attack and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, you know, look, the relationship's been great. We've taken out 100 million barrels of oil already. And a big part of that goes to them, and a big part goes to us. And it's been great. We paid for the war many times over, and we're going to be running the oil. And Venezuela is going to make more money than they ever made, and that's great for the people. The relationship has been great. It's been seamless. Nobody's actually ever seen anything like it. If you look at Iraq, where very stupidly everybody was fired, the generals were fired, the military was fired, the police were fired, the fire departments were fired, and all of the government workers were fired. So after, you know, people would call, they had no idea. And by the way, ISIS was formed. That's where ISIS came from, all of the fired people. We don't believe in that. So we'll see what happens. But first, we have to finish off the military.
What do you think about Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi? Is he an option at all in your mind?
I guess he is. Some people like him, and we haven't been thinking about too much about that. It would seem to me that somebody from within maybe would be more appropriate. I've said that. He looks like a very nice person, but it would seem to me that somebody that's there, that's currently popular, if there's such a person. But we have people like that. We have people that were more moderate. You know, these were radical lunatics, and you know what they get? They get nothing. All they do is kill people.
Mr. President, what exactly was the imminent?
You've asked, or not your turn. Not your turn, please.
Mr. President, are you going to take the heat off the Europeans to potentially help you, Mark Rutte, call on the allies to also help you?
What does that mean?
Well, you have to ask Mark Rutte if he said not as part of NATO, but to be helpful to you in this.
Well, some of the European nations have been helpful and some haven't. And I'm, you know, very surprised. Germany's been great. He's been terrific. Others have been very good, terrific. I think that the head of NATO, Mark, is fantastic. Okay, Mark Rutte. I think he's fantastic. But some of the European, like Spain, has been terrible. In fact, I told Scott to cut off all dealings with Spain. Spain, first of all, it started when every European nation, at my request, paid 5%, which they should be doing. And everybody was enthusiastic about it, Germany, everybody. And Spain didn't do it. And now Spain actually said that we can't use their bases. And that's all right. We don't. We could use their base if we want. We could just fly in and use it. Nobody's going to tell us not to use it. But we don't have to. But they were unfriendly. And so I told him that we don't want to. Spain has absolutely nothing that we need other than great people. They have great people, but they don't have great leadership. And as you know, they were the only country that in NATO would not agree to go up to 5%. I don't think they agreed to go up to anything. They wanted to keep it at 2%, and they don't pay the 2%. So we're going to cut off all trade with Spain. We don't want anything to do with Spain.
Trump saying we're going to cut off all trade with Spain as per their decision yesterday to not let U.S. military bases operate from the country.
Is there expectation towards? And I'm not, by the way, I'm not happy with the UK either. That island that you read about, the lease, okay, he made it for whatever reason, he made a lease of the island. Somebody came and took it away from him. And it's taken 3-4 days for us to work out where we can land there. It would have been much more convenient landing there as opposed to flying many extra hours. So we are very surprised. This is not Winston Churchill that we're dealing with.
Mr. President, what's your expectations towards Germany? What can Germany do and what should Germany do to help you in this moment?
Well, I think they're doing it. I mean, they're letting us land in certain areas, and we appreciate it. And they're just making it comfortable. We're not asking them to put boots on the ground or anything. I mean, we're just, they're a respected country. I have a very good relationship with the country. We have, in particular now, with this leader, with this new leader. I think he's an excellent leader. I had my differences with Angela. I said, you're hurting your country with immigration and you're hurting your country with energy. And we have a man sitting on my right that is, I think, pretty much the opposite of her on energy and the opposite on immigration. And I think he's doing very well.
Commercial air travel right now is severely restricted in the Middle East, and thousands of Americans are stranded. Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly. We thought, and I thought maybe more so than most, I could ask Marco, but I thought we were going to have a situation where we were going to be attacked. They were getting ready to attack Israel. They were getting ready to attack others. You're seeing that right now. And a lot of those missiles that are hitting in, those are stationary. Those were aimed there for a long period of time at these other countries. So I think I was right about that. We attacked first. And if we didn't, it could have been, look, we're really decimating them. They're being decimated. And if we didn't, and by the way, we have massive amounts of ammunition. We have the high end. A lot of it was given away stupidly by Biden, very stupidly, for free. And I'm all for Ukraine, but they gave away a lot. As you know, when I give away ammunition, everybody pays for it. The European Union's paying for it. Then they can do what they want with it, but they are giving it, let's say, to Ukraine, and it's okay. But we gave away a lot of high end, but we have plenty. But we have unlimited middle and upper ammunition, which is really what we're using in this war. And we have really an unlimited supply. We also have a lot of the very high end stored in different countries throughout the world. We're literally storing it there, which is actually something that I insisted on in my first term. I rebuilt the military in my first term. The military is great. Unbelievable amount of ammunition or munitions, as they say, we've given away to, the Wall Street Journal incorrectly covered the story when they said that it was given away to the Middle East. Not to the Middle East, it was given away to Ukraine. Very little was given to the Middle East. Middle East would buy a lot, and some of the nations, because they're rich, they have a lot, but it was given away to Ukraine. And it just should have been done. Look, it's a war that should have never happened. If I were president, that war would have never happened. But we have a tremendous amount of munitions, ammunition at the upper level, middle and upper level, all of which is really powerful stuff.
Mr. President, a question to both of you. How worried are you that the rising prices for gas and oil are damaging the American economy and also Mr. Chancellor?
Yeah, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. This is, of course, damaging our economies. This is true for the oil prices, and this is true for the gas prices as well. So that's the reason why we all hope that this war will come to an end as soon as possible. And we are hoping that the Israeli and the American army are doing the right things to bring this to an end and to have really a new government in place who is coming back to peace and freedom.
Yeah. Something had to be done. And it's been 47 years. They've been.
That's not really an encouraging response by MERS. I mean, the question was, hey, oil prices, isn't that bad for the economy? MERS is like, yeah, it is. So we hope the US and Israel have a plan. I mean, that's quite literally what he said. Yup, it sucks. It's not good for our economy. We hope there's a plan. And so even he's acknowledging it's not going to be pretty if this continues to take place and oil prices continue to shoot up. But the question is, how long will that take place for?
Killing people all over the world for a long time. They were the kings and fathers of the roadside bomb. Soleimani, we killed him last term. If we didn't, I think it might be a different story today. They would have been much stronger and smarter than they are. But they did the roadside bombs. 95% of the people lost their legs, arms, had their face wiped out, just wiped out. I've seen some young people that it's so sad to watch. And that was almost all, 95% comes from Iran and was Soleimani. Soleimani loved his favorite weapon. He loved the roadside bomb. And when you see people walking around with no legs and no arms and a face that's been blown to hell, these people, what they have to go and the way they have to live, this is Iran. When you look at the barracks, the famous barracks, when you look at the hostages, when you look at a lot of hostages, when you look at all of the problems, they were really a purveyor of terror all over the world for many, many years. And it's something that had to be done, and I believe that if we didn't, because I see where Congress, if I didn't do this, guys like Schumer, who are losers, the Democrats, they're losers. That's why they're not here. Guys like Schumer would say, well, you should have done this. In other words, if I did it, it's no good. If I didn't do it, they would have said the opposite, that you should have done this. But most people feel, I'll tell you what, I have never had more compliments on something I did. People felt it's something that had to be done. So if we have a little high oil prices for a little while, but as soon as this ends, those prices are going to drop, I believe, lower than even before. Go ahead, please. Yes.
How do you want to solve the conflict on tariffs between the EU and the US?
Between who?
The conflict on tariffs between the EU and US. How do you want to solve?
And US and who?
EU.
European Union. Well, we won on tariffs, actually. Somebody said you actually won the case. We won on tariffs. We had a decision that was wrong. It was a very bad decision from certain standpoints. From other standpoints, a very powerful decision because it reaffirmed all the fact that we have all these various forms of tariffs that we felt right, but it totally reaffirmed it. It said you can use all of these tariffs. So we have all these vast menus of tariffs, and tariffs have made our country very rich. We have to charge tariffs to nations who play with their money. They move their money up and down like a yo-yo. We have to take care of nations that have been good to us and fair to us, and we're going to take care of them. Other nations, they haven't, and we haven't let them take advantage of us. But the whole thing with tariffs is we had a decision that, like as an example, we have a license situation, and the license is something that allows us to immediately stop all business with nobody even knew we had this power, but we do now because of the decision. We have the right to stop all business having to do with a certain country. If a certain country is not treating us well, the president, without going to Congress, has the right to stop. Sort of interesting. I have the right to stop, but under that one law, I didn't have the right to charge them. So I have the right to license them, but I don't have the right to charge, which is frankly ridiculous. But the right was given to us by the Supreme Court. And we have the right, as an example, we talked about Spain. I could tomorrow stop, or today, even better, stop everything having to do with Spain. All business having to do with Spain. I have the right to stop it. Embargoes, do anything I want with it. And we may do that with Spain. What do you think?
Well, sir, I think we're going to talk about it with you. I know that you have strong power. The Supreme Court clarified. We know you can use it, and if you need to use it to assure national and economic security, we'll do it.
Scott, do you have an opinion?
Sir, I agree. The Supreme Court reaffirmed your ability to implement an embargo, and as we've talked, from your first term, the Section 301s and the 232s have withheld more than 4,000 lawsuits, and USTR and Commerce are going to begin investigations, and we'll move forward with those.
And we've instituted a 15% tariff on everybody, as you know, and just used, I'll tell you, we had a couple of paragraphs written in that opinion that were really incredible. Justice Kavanaugh wrote a fantastic dissent, but in his dissent, he said what we should do, and we knew that too. We just wanted to simplify it, and for some reason, I think, very, very foolishly, the courts decided no, but they said you can do it many other ways, and that's what we're doing. And what we've done is we've gone to a very simple, straight 15% tariff. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in our country because of tariffs. So we've taken in all of this money, hundreds of billions of dollars, and honestly, it's made us very rich as a country. Right? So it's been doing good. When will you have the full plan implemented? We have a 5-month period, up to 5 months, where we can go at 15%. And while we're doing that, as you know, we're doing the various studies and things, and we'll be coming out with different tariffs on different countries. You want to talk about that first?
Yes, sir. By the time the 5-month period has elapsed, we'll have completed investigations under Section 301, which Secretary Bessent talked about. We know there are countries out there with deals who are very interested in keeping the deals. We need to go through and investigate all these unfair trading practices, the kinds of things you talked about, and make sure that we're protecting U.S. economic security. We know there are countries.
How are we going to treat Germany?
Well,
I think you should hit them very, very hard.
You knew he was right there when he said that. They have expressed an interest. Germany's been quite constructive in wanting to move forward and be helpful. The rest of you will talk to them as well. But obviously,
I will say every single country wants to make the deal they already have. In other words, a deal that we have using the other authority, they want to make the same deal. And we'd like to see, actually, we're going to adjust it somewhat upward, actually, but they all want to stay in the deal. And so we'll probably be able to do that pretty easily.
Ukraine, after all, Iran won't be able to deliver drones to Russia anymore. So what does it more mean to Ukraine? And having Chancellor Merkel sitting next to you, who would you call if you want to talk to Europe? And Chancellor Merkel, you've just been in China, the president.
Who are you? What country are you from?
I'm from Germany.
Okay, I thought so. I could see.
So, Mr. Chancellor, you have been in China, and the president.
She likes you.
In China. So
I don't know.
Will you be talking about China and will you?
We'll be talking about China, yeah. Sure.
And what about
I'll be going to China in a little while. Every time you meet, you talk about China. We respect China. I do. We both do, I think. But it's always a topic of conversation. We've had a very good relationship with China. We used to lose a tremendous amount of money with China, and that's no longer the case. We have a very, very good relationship with China, and we have a very good relationship with Germany. All right.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've seen countries around the world, many of whom don't usually work together, working with the United States on Iran, whether it's Saudi Arabia working with the United States, Israel, Qatari shooting down Iranian aircraft, and we've also seen European countries step up. Why are we seeing such unity around the world against Iran?
That's a great point. Look, they're just evil. They're it's not the politics; it's their whole philosophy. It's their whole where they come from. It's terrible. Where they killed 35,000, I thought it was 32. Now it turns out it's much more than 35,000 people, and in some cases using machine guns with people that have no weapon. They have no weapon, and they're being machine gunned. They're being sniped from buildings. They're hitting the people with snipers right through the eyes. It's just a very evil ideology, And nobody's really seen anything like it. As I said, even the fact that they've attacked all of their neighbors, and the neighbors weren't attacking. They thought they'd maybe sit it out or what. They've hit Qatar, they've hit UAE, they've hit Saudi Arabia, they've hit Oman. They were helping us negotiate. They got hit. Everybody got hit because they're evil and they're bad. It's a bad seed, and somebody had to do it, and it should have been done sometime during a 47-year period because so much death has been caused by them, so much unbelievable death. From Germany too. Germany's been hit. Everybody's been hit by them. It's an evil ideology, and I've never been. Look, I've done a lot of good things. So many people are saying thank you, thank you, thank you. You see it in the streets of Los Angeles. They have thousands of people. I saw it the other day. Pictures of Donald Trump, and I'm looking. I'm on the phone, probably talking to you, and I'm looking, and I see my picture. I say, oh no, it's another, protest. I see my, and then I started saying, boy, they were very friendly people. And then I saw a woman hugging the picture of me. I said, what's going on? And it turned out to be these are Iranian people that live in the United States.
So many.
Thousands and thousands. You saw the rallies. And in New York, too, they had a big rally, my pictures all over the place. The fact is that people are happy what we did. And you could never, and I've always said it, you could never have had true peace in the Middle East if Iran was allowed to go, even beyond the nuclear. If Iran was allowed to have look at all the missiles they built. A lot have been now taken out by us, and a lot have been expended. But they have thousands of missiles in a fairly short period of time. And I'll go two things. The attack that we did, known as Midnight Hammer, had we not done that, Iran would have had a very powerful nuclear weapon within 1 month.
You meant to say Epic Fury. Midnight Hammer was for Venezuela.
We did it. It was great timing, but, and you've been able to see that too. The other thing was Barack Hussein Obama made maybe the worst deal I've ever seen, because he gave all power in the Middle East to Iran. He went the exact opposite way, and I terminated that. If I didn't terminate that deal, they would be sitting with a massive nuclear weapon 3 years ago, which would have been used already on Israel at least, and other countries also. And we wouldn't be talking about it right now. But if I didn't terminate the deal that Obama made, giving them everything, including plane loads of cash. You remember the airplane flew over there? It was a Boeing 757. There was two of them loaded. They took out all the seats. It was loaded with green cash. So much cash that it was in Virginia, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. They got all the cash from all the banks. They put it, and they flew it to Iran. I never knew a president had that power. I'm going to maybe try it sometime if it's okay. I think I'm going to do it. I'll fly it somewhere. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. 2 planes loaded from floor to ceiling, big planes, Boeing 757s, taken over there and given cash. In addition to that, he was giving them billions of dollars. But worse, he was giving them the right to have the path to a nuclear weapon. And that deal expired. A lot of people said, oh, you terminated it. Well, it was going to be terminated anyway because it expired. It gave them the right to have top-of-the-line nuclear weapon. If they had, because they're crazy, just like the people on my right during the State of the Union. I looked at them, I said, you're crazy? These people are crazy. And if they had a nuclear weapon, they would have used it. All right, how about 1 or 2 more?
Mr. President.
Go ahead, please.
You just heard that the president is thinking about punishing Spain. What are your thoughts spontaneously on this, and what can you do to,
Well, the answer on that is quite simple. We are trying to convince Spain to catch up with the 3% or 3.5%, which we agreed on in NATO. And as the president said, it's correct. Spain is the only one who is not willing to accept that. And we are trying to convince them that this is a part of our common security that we all have to comply with these numbers. And this is 3.5 for military and another 1.5 for our military infrastructure. So Spain has to comply with that.
Spain has been very, very uncooperative. And so has UK. Now, the second one is shocking, but this is not the age of Churchill. I will say the UK has been very, very uncooperative with that stupid island that they have, that they gave away and took a 100-year lease, having to do with perhaps indigenous people claiming the island that never even saw the island before. What's that all about? And they ruin relationships. It's a shame. It's and that country, UK, and I love that country. I love it. My mother was born there. I love it. My mother was born there. My father was born. Right, he knows all about my father. My father was born there. So very places that you sort of automatically very feel warmly about. But the UK, what they're doing with energy and what they're doing with immigration is horrible. You have the North Sea. Somebody said yesterday, what would you do if you were the UK? Open up the North Sea. They got windmills all over the place that are ruining the country, ruining the landscapes, ruining the beautiful fields. Open up the North Sea. It's one of the greatest. Think of it. They buy their energy from Norway, which gets the energy, the oil, from the North Sea. So Norway drills in the North Sea and sells it to UK. And UK has a better part of the North Sea. Open up that. And number two, illegal immigration. They got to solve that problem. And I must say, that's not only UK, that's other parts of the European Union that have the same problem. Immigration and energy. The energy is through the roof, the highest in the world. And the immigration was, look, you have places where in the UK, you have a terrible mayor of London, terrible. He's an incompetent guy. But you have Sharia courts. You don't have Sharia courts. You don't want Sharia courts. You have Sharia courts adjudicating law. So it's very simple. Immigration, very importantly, immigration and energy. And you bring it back. Otherwise, you're not going to bring it back. Okay. One more. Go ahead.
I have a question for the Chancellor.
Yes, please.
To the Chancellor, Chancellor,
Yeah.
you've called for unity and joint force in this moment against Iran. What does that look like to you? And then, Mr. President, where is getting a deal with Russia and Ukraine on your priority list right now?
Okay,
so we, as I said in Germany the last 2 days, we are supporting the United States and Israel to get rid of this terrible terrorist regime. And we are looking forward to a day after, and we have to talk about the strategy. What is following after this regime is away, and we have to strategize on this entire region. And we are having a high interest in common approach and common work and what we can do. And this is important not just for the Americans. This is extremely important for Europe and extremely important for Israel and their security. So we are really looking forward to find ways how to deal about the day after.
And as far as Russia, Ukraine, where is it on my priority list? Very high. We thought that, I thought it was going to be one of the easier ones. I've settled 8 wars, and actually maybe one more than that. But minimum 8 wars, big ones, potential India, Pakistan, big wars, very important, big ones. I thought this was going to be much easier than it is. There's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky, tremendous hatred. I've seen a lot of hatred in my life, but I think this is about top scale. I believe it's going to happen. Sometimes I blame one, sometimes I blame the other. I think it's going to happen, but it's high on my list. Not in that it affects the United States so much because it's very far away, but last week and for the last 4 weeks actually, 32,000 soldiers died. 32,000. And it's been averaging 25 to 30,000 soldiers a month have been dying in that stupid war. And I'd love to see it ended. It's the worst that there has been since World War II.
If you can't get a deal, what will that mean for you?
All you can do is do your best. It takes two to tango, and they have to get along. They have to be able to talk to each other. They hate each other a lot. That has an impact. It really has an impact. It's bad for both. The saddest is that if the election weren't rigged, my election, that war would have never taken place. And you know what else wouldn't have taken place? Allowing 25 million people to pour through an open border. That wouldn't have taken place. A lot of things would have been different. But we're doing very well. And I think a big factor in this world and future factor is what we're doing right now with Iran. If we don't stop them, or if we didn't stop them, or if we didn't start, they've been decimated. But if we didn't do what we're doing right now, you would have had a nuclear war, and they would have taken out many countries, because you know what? They're sick people. They're mentally ill, sick people. They're angry. They're crazy. They're sick. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that's what you got from Donnie T. Again, the continued justification for the war was around nuclear weapon. He denied that Israel was the reason that they got into the war. He actually said he forced Israel to get into the war. And then he said, we're shutting off all trade with Spain, which I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but that is a response to Spain's decision from yesterday. Market likes it. 145.60 on Palantir. Green. Nvidia just below 180, but nice, at least beginning of recovery. I mean, down 1.3% on Nvidia is really not much. S&P, it was down 2.5. Now it's down 1.2. 50% of the drawdown has been recovered, which is nice to see. Tesla 392, that's down 2.8. Bitcoin right there, back above 68. You got Target, that's up 6%. We haven't made a full recovery across the board, obviously, but things are not grabbed back above 4 as ugly as they were even 20 minutes ago. Pinterest, that's up 7. What about Korea? EWY is actually only down 10. It was down 15 at one point. So again, we're probably still going to be red for the day. If we actually flip green on the indices, that would be incredible. But the VIX has completely taken a haircut after being up 30% on the day. VIX is now only up 12%. Obviously, it could be a head fake. It could once again be the choppiness of the market. Salesforce actually flipping green as software in general flips green. IGV, that's green. Also, Microsoft finally getting that 400 level. Maybe it can hold on to that. Microsoft 40194. ASTS, look, they had a good guide for people that are wondering why the stock is up. They're guiding for 300% revenue growth going into 2027. I mean, yeah, it has a aggressive valuation, but if they're going to match that guide, the valuation starts to become a lot more reasonable. So not that surprising that ASTS catching the bid. The stock was also at these levels a couple weeks ago anyway, so it's not like it hasn't traded here. But it makes sense after that guide for them to get this momentum. 95.86, and then you have Meta right there, 650.199 on the day. All right. That is it for at least the market, or at least for the morning in terms of monitoring the situation. Back-to-back streams, 3.5 hours. This is what you got to do when you monitor the situation. I believe we're having Technical Tuesday today. I'm pretty sure. I will confirm with Jason, but we should be having it. And then we have CrowdStrike and GitLab earnings today. Broadcom is tomorrow. So CrowdStrike and GitLab. Oh, by the way, Best Buy had a really good earnings. That stock is up 6%. They beat on the guide, EBITDA, net income, and revenue. It was at 71 at one point. So at least the consumer demand for stores like Best Buy, not necessarily showing that much weakness. And then Target also showed consumer demand is okay. Best Buy right there, up 6%. All right, word of the day. Word of the day is... All right, I'm going to think about this one before I say it. I feel like the two Fs are going to mess me up. Effulgent. No, the two Fs should just be a normal one F sound. Effulgent. Effulgent. Radiantly shining, brilliant, or glowing with light or enthusiasm. This is a good word. Effulgent.
Effulgent.
Okay, so instead of a eh, it's a I, but we didn't mess that one up too hard. Her effulgent confidence after years of discipline wasn't loud. It simply spoke for itself, a luminous word for quiet brilliance. All right. That's what we got, folks. Word of the day. Yes, sniper. That was another word of the day. Dude, there were some moments in that speech that, I mean, Trump said some things that were a bit interesting. The China stuff was a bit weird. The Spain stuff, I don't think he's cutting off old trade with Spain, but he's making that argument. Besant then agreed that we should cut off old dealings with Spain. He says the U.S. doesn't want anything to do with Spain. I understand why he's saying it, because he's pissed off about what Spain said. I don't know if that means we're going to be cutting them off. But they also talked about tariffs, and they talked about how the court gives him the ability to have these tariffs go on for longer than expected. So, maybe they will have some level of legal justification for these tariffs over the coming months. All right, I will be back at market close. We will continue to monitor the situation. Again, throughout the entire past 4 days, we've seen random updates immediately. So if there's any bombings or embassy closings, if it helps spike the price of oil, then we'll probably see it reflect in the market. But hopefully there's not too much craziness that's happening over the coming hours here. All right, I'll be back on the close. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'll see you then. We'll have Technical Tuesday, and we'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys in a couple hours. Bye, everyone.